the Keir Starmer, and then I would tell the Galactic Empire that he was part of the Rebel Alliance and let them blow him away with the Death Star. No Brits was involved, no fingers could be pointed.
You carry on taking the medication, George. Yes, I'd send all the Labour government to space with a one-way ticket and throw in the SNP for being useless. They're all a bunch of... Oh, all right, fair enough.
One person, quite frankly, I think needs to go to space in a one-way journey is Jeremy Kyle. He goes on about his age one more time, how he's 60 this year, he was 59 last year, repetitively over the course of the weeks and months. We have to hear him, I'm 60 this year, I'm 60 this year.
Richard Tice, did you put that cheeky bugger up to that?
I'm hoping he's going to send me the invoice because that was absolutely brilliant.
Which MP would you send to space?
Although I'll get in terrible trouble if I answer that. But it's fair to say there's quite a long list.
The sad thing is about sending people into space on a one-way ticket is I don't think that we've built a spaceship big enough to take the lunatics off this planet. I mean, from the net zero loonies to the transgender loonies to the racists to the terrorists, there is just so much to the wokerati. We need some big spaceships.
Big spaceships.
Good evening. I never know how you're going to start this conversation, Jeremy.
Katy Perry went to space today, OK? Who would you send... I'd love her to say what I wanted to, but I'd never disrespect her. Who would you send to space who could never come back?
Well, I'd be happy to send Ed Miliband to space, I think.
Oh, that is an outrageous question, so I'm not even going to answer that question.
Sam Matterface, so you get the job, yeah? Come on.
No, Sam Matterface, I tell you what, there's no.
I think David Lammy would be the person I'd want to send up in space and never come back again.
Yeah, the problem is how much would the bill be for him to munch through whatever food on the way there?
Hey, it worked.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This
Good morning and welcome to Morning Glory. Coming up to 3 minutes past 6 is another glorious morning, ladies and gentlemen. We have reached Wednesday, the 9th of July, and here we are in the Entente Cordiale. In fact, the Entente Cordiale is so cordial, they're not even calling it the Entente Cordiale anymore. They're calling it something else, which I can't quite explain in French, but it's all over the papers this morning. Emmanuel Macron was hosted by King Charles last night at a state dinner, effectively, I suppose you would call it that, in Windsor. Keir Starmer wasn't really anywhere to be seen. I think he was there, but he didn't really say much. He didn't really have much to offer, and it was all about King Charles talking in French and Emmanuel Macron talking in English. Quentin Letts in the Daily Mail today sums it up rather well. He says, 10 minutes in, Macron's accent was becoming a touch hello, and by the end we were in Inspector Clouseau territory. Comment allez-vous? Basically, he's given us nothing. He's taken loads and loads of money from us, and he's taken our food and our wine and our drink. They were giving him English fizz, I think, last night, just to impress him. But at the end of the day, what is the bleeding point? They're not going to do a deal on the migrants. He's actually said that we are too nice to them. UK makes it too easy for migrants to build a new life, according to Emmanuel Macron. Well, stop bleeding while sending them here. Would you mind arresting them and locking them up? Maybe that would help. We'll be talking about lots and lots of that. Theo Usherwood's here as well. Very good morning to you, Theo. Lots of other stories to talk about. The post office has blood on its hands over the toll of 13 suicides. That's on the front page of the Daily Mail, because it would appear that at least 13 sub-postmasters and mistresses took their own lives as a result of the horrendous sort of investigation into the Horizon IT scandal. Campaigners were claiming last night that it was an absolute stitch-up, devastating human toll, and absolutely something has to be done about it. Compensation must be paid as well. Front page of The Guardian, they want to do away with jury trials just because we need to speed things up a bit. Nothing to do with taking away your rights or your freedoms. Nothing to do with that at all, no. Front page of The Times, Labour rules out paying doctors more to halt a strike. Yeah, Wes Streeting apparently is not very happy after having given 22% of a pay rise to the junior doctors, who apparently don't want to be called junior doctors anymore. anymore, so I'm going to do it just to annoy them. They're going to go on strike again because they want another 29%. And basically, he says the public will not forgive you. Imagine bringing the NHS to its knees when it's already on its knees. Front page of the Sun has got a slightly different story. They go with Greg Wallace, who was finally fired last night by the BBC over all the allegations against him made when he was in the host, of course, of MasterChef. After a 9-month misconduct probe, he was finally fired by the BBC. He says he's not going to go quietly. He says it's all-out war. He's also claiming now that he's apparently autistic and that he suffers from a disability, which obviously at random times of the day and night makes him get his member out, flash it around and take his trousers down. I've never heard of that particular disability, but we'll be looking into it. 0344 499 1000 is the number. 6 minutes past 6. This is Morning Glory. Let's get it on. And breathe. So we should celebrate this morning because it turns out that the UK government has plunged to a minus 67% approval rating just since the last time I saw you, Theo.
The lowest on record from YouGov, of course, a respected pollster. I mean, who would have thunk it?
Yes.
A year ago when Keir Starmer became Prime Minister, he had that little bump in the polls. People thought he was doing very well, getting on with the job. And here we are 12 months later, and it is now the most unpopular,
for those of you who can see it on screen, it's the big red line at the top, which is going up and up and up, but it's actually going into the minus territory, minus 67. I mean, we thought it was bad last weekend when it was minus 54. For Keir Starmer. It's now gone to minus 67. So and there's nothing he's doing to improve it either.
And people don't trust him. They feel that they feel that he's not listening to them. When you get into the detail, it does not make good reading for Number 10 and for the government. And he's got to find a way of turning it around.
Right. And I mean, there is no way to turn it around because I mean, I remember we did this story last week when I was at Piss in the Sun. The approval rating of Keir Starmer was minus 54 after 1 year in government. When Tony Blair was in 1 year in government, it was plus 35 or something like that.
Yeah.
You know, so he's really breaking the bank here.
This is unprecedented.
It's uncharted territory.
It's unprecedented. We've never seen a government plunge to popularity ratings this low. It's just never happened. Even if you think back to the worst days of Rishi Sunak, or even when Boris Johnson at the height of Partygate, Theresa May, she was not a popular Prime Minister, but it was not this bad for her.
No,
this is something else, man. Right. This is a different level.
Because everything they do turns out to be a lie. Everything they say turns out not to be something they're going to do. And as I say, I mean, last night we had this rather slightly bizarre kind of hello moment where you've got Emmanuel Macron and the King sort of throwing faint praise on one another in terms of the matters of state. But basically Macron has come here to tell Keir Starmer that he's messing it all up.
Yeah.
And that he's got no idea how to deal with the migrant crisis. Macron's not going to help him. He's not going to give him anything on the small boats, is he?
No, he's got until tomorrow to try and strike some sort of deal, but it's not going to. There's going to be nothing of any tangible use for the Prime Minister. No. Emmanuel Macron yesterday he's been clear. You know, he lays the blame at the feet of Keir Starmer because we make it too easy for migrants to come.
Yeah.
I mean, the French president's obviously been reading The Sun.
Yeah.
I mean, he's seen the front pages day after day of Deliveroo riders who have absolutely no legal right to be in this country using fake accounts to
stay here.
Money and stay here.
He's also been listening to this show because he's heard all about the migrant hotels. He's heard all about the HMOs, the private houses that are being basically commissioned by the state to house these people in towns and cities up and down the land. He's heard about how easy it is for them to stay here even if they're denied asylum. You know, and it's not how the French deal with it.
No, it's not. And I think what's important is that if you're thinking that Emmanuel Macron might strike a deal with Keir Starmer, it's really not his deal to strike.
Yeah.
Because you have to remember that on this one-in, one-out deal that was being proposed,
which is the thing they're clinging on to, which is hopeless anyway.
It's not going to happen,
right?
The other
but even if it was going to happen, it's not a plan. You know, it doesn't reduce migration; it increases it.
Yeah, because you have a 50-50 chance that you can, as long as you can prove you've got some distant relative in this country, you can come here. But the other thing to remember, of course, is that France is stitching up those southern European nations because they know full well that the migrants then, if this were to ever happen, the migrants sent back from Britain to France wouldn't just stay in France, they would go back to Spain, Greece, Cyprus, Malta, those countries, Italy as well, those countries where they first arrived. And those countries have now written to the European Commission and said, no, we cannot have this deal. We cannot go through. And so materially, it is not going to happen. And it's disappointing, isn't it? Because it's another fail, on the.
Well, a lot of people yesterday were asking me on this very show, why are we having a state visit for Macron? You know, he's done nothing for Britain. He's quite frankly done more harm than he's done good. He's stood in the way of everything that we've tried to do with the migrants, and he's also never stopped moaning about the fact that we left the European Union. He did it again yesterday.
Yesterday, couldn't help himself.
You know, so why is he here?
Because.
Coalition of the willing.
Coalition of the willing. Decisions being taken in government that actually quite good to be close. Try and repair relations after Brexit.
Yeah, but I mean, it's all cobblers, isn't it? I mean, I was listening to a bunch of pundits last night on the TV, all trying to kind of justify why he's here, and it was all about and they sort of hurled themselves on the altar of Ukraine finally to go. Oh well, they have to talk about Ukraine. Why? Not really. You know, it's not necessary.
The coalition of being willing has been made redundant. It's obvious that
it has.
There's a three-way deal. We saw that with.
It's
Trump.
a chance to roll out the sort of red carpet. There's pictures of them all in the papers today, resplendent in sashes and badges.
But you know who's going to want the same? Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And I think there's a real danger. You've given the red carpet treatment to Macron.
Yeah.
And we know which way the king. We know the politics of the king. It makes no secret.
The king's not doing himself any great favours, I don't think, in his politics.
And if we can't get, if we don't offer the same to Donald Trump, then he's not going to just take it lying down.
No, of course not.
That's a really crucial deal because we've seen, with steel tariffs.
Well, the deal still hasn't been done.
No, it hasn't been done.
Despite the fact that we've been told months ago that we've done this great trade deal with the US, wasn't done.
It wasn't a trade deal.
No.
It was a heads of terms.
No, but then the other day, again, we've done the great trade deal. He keeps talking about it in the House of Commons whenever anybody says, what have you done for me lately? He goes, well, we've done 500 breakfast clubs and a great trade deal with the USA, India and the EU. None of which is true.
The only bit that he's done is he's sorted out the automotive industry, but he hasn't sorted out steel.
No. And he's going to miss the deadline, which is, I think, today, right?
Today, tomorrow? I think
today
it's
or tomorrow. But he's not going to make the deadline, so the tariffs remain on steel.
And that's just going to cripple the steel. It's going to cripple the steel industry. And the way it was presented when he got that last-minute deal, we had that press conference, was that this was all done and dusted.
Yeah.
It wasn't a trade deal. We could all see it wasn't a trade deal.
More lies. More lies. Now, here's something that's going to wind up an awful lot of people, and I'm going to ask you to listen very carefully to this particular clip from last night. Emmanuel Macron talking about migration. Spot the word that you didn't want to hear.
France and the United Kingdom have a shared responsibility to address irregular migration with humanity, solidarity and firmness. The decisions that we will take at our bilateral summit will respond to our aims for cooperation and tangible results on these major issues. But our objective, very clearly, is to have the best ever cooperation between our two countries in order to fix today what is a burden for our two countries.
What is a burden? As Quentin Letts quite rightly points out, it started off as a bit sort of hello, ends up a bit Inspector Clouseau. But did you spot the word?
Irregular?
Irregular migration, right?
Yeah.
Now, I wonder who else would have used that word last night. Have a check of the King.
Our diplomats will work together to defend the international rule of law and the multilateral system. Our security services and police will go further still to protect us against the profound challenges of terrorism, organised crime, cyber attacks, and, of course, irregular migration across the English Channel.
Why do they say it? Why do they say irregular migration? It's not a word. It's not bloody irregular. It's illegal. That's the word you want to use. It's illegal migration. Bloody irregular. Planks. It's not. And it's a... It's a woke, ridiculous lefty phrase which has been put in there by the bloody civil servants of this country who think that by saying irregular, it suddenly doesn't make it illegal. What's wrong with them?
So the civil servants originally had it in. The original word was irregular. The Tories took it out and used illegal. and then when Keir Starmer...
the original word was never irregular. It was an invented word by the
Oh,
civil
yeah,
service.
sorry, I'm just...
I mean, it's not a word that I would ever... You wouldn't use it, right?
No, I wouldn't.
Like, if you walk through a barrier on the tube, you wouldn't be called an irregular user of the tube. You'd be saying he broke the law. You're illegal.
You went and stole something from the shop. You wouldn't
it's not
be
irregular.
Irregular shopping.
Yeah, it's not irregular shopping. I mean, somebody made that joke months ago on here when they said, "Oh, I'm just about to go out and do some irregular shopping." It's not irregular. It's bloody well illegal. What's wrong with them? Why can't they say it?
They can't. They don't. I tell you, look, I'll be honest with you. The reason they don't want to say it is they don't want to. They want to try and downplay the problem. They want to make it...
It's a bit late for that. 170,000 late for that, who came in since 2018 on boats.
Yeah. It's
170,000.
But they're trying to be like, if you use the word illegal, then they would come, the civil servants, the blob, the establishment, Keir Starmer would say, well, if you use the word illegal, then it's only going to ramp it up and it's going to make it... people are going to strike fear into them that you have 170,000 people since 2018 coming to this country illegally.
Yeah.
If you say irregular, then what is it? Then you're asking that question. What is irregular?
Yeah, but it's also inaccurate because the one thing that it's not is irregular. It happens every bloody day. It's very regular, actually. It's regular. You might as well call it regular if you want to call it something other than illegal. Call it regular. It's not irregular. Can't even say it. It's not irregular, is it?
No.
It's I'm sorry, I'm going to say it again. It's bollocks. It's just rubbish. My apologies. I can't help it. It drives me insane. They think we're stupid. They're going to, oh, that's all right. Just tell them it's irregular, and then they won't worry about it so much.
Because they won't necessarily. Yeah,
we won't notice. We won't get upset, and we'll all think that, oh, actually, there isn't an immigration problem because it's not illegal. It's just irregular. I mean, what's a load of old cobblers?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sick of it. I'm sick of it. Anyway, I better take a break before I start swearing properly because I'm feeling quite punchy this morning. It's 17 minutes past 6. Theo Usherwood is here. Morning, Mike and Theo. What happened when the delivery companies were called to meet with someone from the government last week, if anything? I don't recall hearing anything in the news. As usual, nothing will happen about this, I'm guessing, says Nick in Kent. I think Angela Eagle had a meeting, didn't she, with several of these.
And we saw the police turned up a week later.
Yeah, and the police have arrested some people at one hotel, right? That's it. Performative, done, dusted, we're sorted. No, not enough. Sorry.
But this isn't... there's a tendency in Westminster, and I always take your point, Mike, when you say, Westminster journalists have a sort of slightly skewed prism of the world, because I think it's probably true. But it's really important to understand the sense of anger and frustration out there in the country about what is going on.
Absolutely.
And they have got to get to grips with it, because if they don't get to grips with it, they're toast.
They are.
They are
and
done.
There's no point in pretending that they're getting to grips with it by having, irregular meetings with people and making out that they've solved a problem when they clearly haven't. And there isn't also any room for simply renaming things to make it sound less bad than it is.
No, I can 100% agree. But the point of this meeting, the whole point of this summit, you can take away the pomp and the pageantry, right? The actual substantive point of why is Emmanuel Macron here? Why is he getting the red carpet treatment? Why have we given the French £750 million? Is to stop this happening.
Right.
Because every time you speak to civil servants...
Except it won't.
Precisely. But can you actually... it feels so much like more of the same. If you're listening to this show and you are and you're thinking and you just want to throw your porridge against the wall, I can't really blame you.
No.
Because I understand why you're frustrated, because you're thinking, we've given the French 750 million, we've given the red carpet treatment to Emmanuel Macron.
What have we got for it?
Are we going to... And then the guy...
Apparently we're going to get the Bayeux Tapestry for a couple of weeks.
And then he turns up, and he says, not my problem, blame Deliveroo.
Right.
That's essentially what he said.
And he also says that it's our fault because we are, in fact, too good to the migrants, which is entirely what Nigel Farage said.
Because we haven't got to grips with it. And you can't... And you actually, if you're looking for a way out, we're giving him such an easy way out. Because we're not doing our bit by ensuring that when you arrive in this country, you can't just hop on a bike and start delivering Chinese food all day.
Well, how about he tries to stop them leaving France? But, of course, he's not going to do that because it's not in his interest to stop them leaving France. He wants them to go. LA. It's 19 minutes past 6. I'm going to go for a long walk. I'll be back after this.
The whole scheme needs to be scrapped. I'm sorry, it is so rotten to the core that the whole thing needs to be completely dismantled, and we can perhaps start again with a scheme for a very, very, very small number of the most needy, because that's what a civilized society does. And I'm talking a tiny fraction of the current claimants. It is a complete and utter scandal, this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 22 minutes past 6. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through, of course, until 10 o'clock. Theo Usherwood is here as well. Just a bit of breaking news from overnight, really, more than breaking news this morning. 67% of the populace of this country now disapprove of this government, the highest number that has ever existed in the history of government. Nobody has hated a government more than the people of this country now hate this one. Let's get a voice note from Matt.
Mike, Matt in Hove here. Just on this one-in, one-out scheme that Macron and Starmer are cooking up, this has to be one of the worst deals I've ever known. Say, for example, 1,000 came over in a week, and then on Monday morning we send 1,000 back, and then Tuesday Macron sends over the 1,000 that they don't want. They're less 1,000 migrants. We're 1,000 migrants up. And we're paying them for it. They should be paying us. And not only that, is we're paying them to get rid of the migrants that they don't want. We might as well leave it as it is. What a joke.
Yeah. It is a joke, and it's completely and utterly barking mad. There's no rhyme or reason to it. And the only thing that apparently we're going to get out of it as a tangible benefit is we get the Bayeux Tapestry for a couple of weeks.
Have you seen it? It's quite impressive.
Do you know, I was in Bayeux a couple of years ago with my kids, and they went to watch, go and look at it with their mother, and I just took the dog for a walk because I preferred to do that. So I haven't seen it, no. But what I know about it is that it's not a true representation of what actually happened.
No.
It was a cooked-up kind of, vanity project by some Normandy duke who fancied himself in the middle of the war situation. So no, I haven't.
To the point. Was it Matt who sent that voice note in? It's a fair point he's making, actually, because
he's right on the numbers as well.
It's remarkably similar to what Labour were proposing before the general election, whereby we enter a sort of a scheme, a pooled scheme, where you have migrants arriving in Europe, and then we have to take a certain number that's based on.
That was an old EU plan, wasn't it?
An old EU. Well, I think it's still in place, which is not part of the European Union, but we subscribe to it. And the danger is, of course, that if we enter a deal like this, you might not see people crossing the English Channel, but by the back door, people will be coming in on a plane, because we will be taking our allocation. And the Tories made the point before the general election that could be 100,000. And even if we hit current projections this year, it's going to be 70,000. So it could, as Matt was saying, it could actually end up worse.
Right. And obviously we're supposedly making plans to let people in who have got connections to the country. Well, they all have. Every single one of them who arrives already says that. They already say that, the reason we're coming here, and the reason the lefties would always justify it on the grounds that, they have family members here, or, they speak English, or, there's always a reason as to why they should be given access to our shores. How about this from Warwick in Devon? Morning, Mike and Theo. Brutally honest start to the show, as usual. What on earth is King Charles doing fawning all over Macron? Elizabeth II would never have done so. King Charles has lost the plot and has joined Stalin in making our once great country a laughingstock, with everybody now taking the mick. When will King Charles and Stalin house some of the illegal immigrants in their own plush homes, as they love them so much? I mean, people are just sick to death of all of this nonsense, It's a very straightforward conversation. We need to stop the boats coming. It's that simple. You don't just let people come here and then distribute them around the country based on whether or not they've got family members. Just stop them coming.
When you listen to speeches by Queen Elizabeth II, King Charles's mother, you never listen to the speech and think, "Oh, I wouldn't have put that in," or "I wouldn't have said that."
Yeah.
Why have they got to say?
She was always spot on in her description of everything.
She was spot on, and even when she was dealing with really difficult issues, she managed to rise above it and not make a partisan argument. And my slight concern for King Charles is he's making a very partisan argument. He talked about Britain, there not being borders and we're not a fortress.
We're all part of a sort of globalised somehow
that's not
entity.
I don't know who's advising the King, but I wouldn't have thought that would be the way to rise above it in the same way that his mother did.
And also he made a similar blunder, I think I'm right in saying this, with the 7/7 commemoration, because again he made a statement, he issued a speech in which he referred to, not letting, those who would divide us win the argument, as it were, instead of actually talking about the people who blew everybody up. Who happened to be Muslim terrorists. Islamist terrorists. He didn't mention the word Islam, didn't mention the word Muslim, didn't mention the word terrorist. And when people want to think about what happened on 7/7 20 years ago, they want to be reminded, actually, that it was a horrible, ghastly terrorist attack. It wasn't a tragic event, as it was described by Keir Starmer. It was a horrible, nasty attack on this country by people who hate us. And they happen to be Muslims, right? Yeah. So why not just say it? Call a spade a bleeding spade. Stop treating us like idiots.
It's gone. But this is where there is a gap in public discourse for people to actually, particularly the right in this country to take this government on.
Yeah.
Because like you said, it wasn't.
But it doesn't.
Keir Starmer says lives lost. It wasn't a hurricane. Was it a hurricane? No. Was it a tornado? Was there an earthquake? No.
Yeah.
It was a terrorist attack.
Was it some irregular weather? No.
No, it wasn't. It was a terrorist attack.
Right.
And we've got to be able to. We can't get into this sort of.
It is.
We can't get into this sort of Kafkaesque doom loop where we can't just say what has happened for fear of offending somebody or for fear of.
People have been killed. I think you don't have to worry about offending people. Do you know what I mean? That's what people say now to me all the time. Maggie in London says, "You're so right. The King hasn't done himself any favours. That banquet alone, all that lavish food whilst people are struggling, and irregular migration. No, it's an invasion. Easy for Charles to say, as he's surrounded by walls and lives in gated mansions." I totally agree with you, Mike Graham. You sound as angry as most of the UK. Because people are. People are sick to death of it. We're fed up. Who wants to watch Emmanuel Macron, dressed up to the nines, looking like a bleeding French peacock, sitting next to King Charles, a man who's done nothing in his life apart from have privilege and a very, very nice, lifestyle and a beautiful wife who he cheated on? What on earth have we got to offer this man? Well, why should he sit there high on the hog telling us all about irregular migration? Get bleeding stuffed, mate. I'm starting to turn into a bloody Republican at this point. Simon from Durham says, "The word irregular tells you all you need to know. Starmer and co, the King and the likes of Macron, do not give a stuff about illegal immigration. Any attempt made to address the issue will only be the usual tinkering around the edges. It's a shambles, but more importantly, it is an utter disgrace."
Yeah.
People are not going to put up with this for much longer. I'm talking to people all the time now who are literally hopping mad at the way the government's talking to them, at the way that the sort of civil service talks to them, the way that they don't appear to have any sway in what happens to their lives. They're getting pushed around, they're getting taxed up the wazoo, and everything's been given free to a load of immigrants and a load of people scrounging on benefits, and the rest of us are happy to pay for all of it. And we've had enough. Quite frankly,
there's a fundamental. The problem the government has got is there's a fundamental feeling in the country of unfairness. Everything this government can't do anything until it deals with this problem.
Yeah.
And what hasn't sort of entered their conscience, entered their consciousness, is that every time they want to cut disability benefits for kids, cut the winter fuel allowance, whatever they want to do.
Put up taxes for employers, put up taxes for business, put up taxes for ordinary people.
But people go, hang on a moment, we've got, and this was literally the reform line in the Runcorn and Helsby by-election from Sarah Pochin, the reform now MP, turned around and said, you're taking away our winter fuel allowance, but we've got 750 migrants who are being housed for free. So the government is finding itself, and what it can't get out of because it seems incapable of dealing with this particular problem, and there's no sign that they will deal with this problem, is they can't get out of this doom loop that they're not on the side of working people. The people, I use that phrase advisedly. That's Keir Starmer's phrase, working people, as you say. But actually, there are people out there who make this country tick. They get up at 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock in the morning.
They're on their way to work now.
They're on their way to work now. They are paying through the nose in terms of tax, and they're getting so little back because, you know what, they might even want a doctor's appointment. Are they going to get a doctor's appointment? And is their waiting list going to come down?
Not
a chance.
No, we'll come on to doctors in a minute because they're going on strike again. Those wonderful people in the NHS, I mean, absolute scumbags. Have a look at this, though. This is Brigitte Macron, who apparently snubbed Emmanuel Macron's hand as they were getting off the plane. I suppose it makes a change from slapping him or pushing him around. He goes there and she just kind of avoids his hand. Very strange relationship, that, isn't it? He gets his hand out, she completely and utterly doesn't go for it. I don't know what that's all about. I mean, if that was my girlfriend, I'd think, crikey, it's not long for this world, is it? Hey? We'll start looking for another one.
She just doesn't. It always happens when he's on a plane. Maybe she doesn't like flying.
Maybe she doesn't like flying. Maybe it's something like to do with that. Yeah, absolutely right. One here from Sean. After the pompous speeches last night, I think I'll submit an irregular tax return today for 24-25. Sean from Bridlington, yeah. And Bill in Cheshire. Illegal or irregular, they changed the name because they will start to redefine the data. If everything is measured from now on as irregular, that sets the benchmark. The hundreds of thousands of previous illegal immigrants can now be forgotten. Stats now look less bad and nobody will notice. Job done. Liars, one and all. I wouldn't be surprised if that's what they're trying to do, trying to recalibrate what it is that actually is what is before everybody's eyes. The emperor's new clothes. Oh, look, it's not illegal anymore. We've stopped illegal immigration. We've just started calling it something different.
But you can't.
They can't do that.
They can't do that, and the reason they can't do that is because this what we see in terms of people arriving in this country on small boats has a profound effect on some of the poorest communities in this country. Because they're not housing them in North London. They're not housing these. The migrants aren't being housed in hotels in Belgravia or in posh parts of Herne Hill or wherever. They're being housed in. Towns and cities up and down north of England, the Midlands, where the rents in terms of the houses of multiple occupancy or the hotels are much, much cheaper. Places where many of your listeners are writing in from or sending voice notes from, and therefore they see it because you have a concentration in terms of the setup, and they see it and they see it and they
it's affecting their daily lives. So don't tell me it's bloody well irregular. It's not. It's regular and it's causing a lot of problems. Just before we go to the next break, a reminder that it's not just us that think this government is absolute and utter pants. 67% of people down disapprove of this government, according to YouGov. And even the OBR, that's the Office of Budget Responsibility, has basically warned that Britain's economy is, in their words, increasingly vulnerable. Ahead of Rachel Reeves' Mansion House speech next week, they're basically saying that spending promises are unaffordable, rising debt and demands on spending in government and an older and sicker population are basically ruining the economy of this country. There are new downside risks, is what they're saying. So even the OBR, hold that thought, because we're going to come back to it, the OBR is complaining that this government doesn't know how to run an economy effectively. 6:34.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, and of course, here we are, it's 6:36. How the hell can Charles and Starmer entertain Macron when he has got £771 million that he should give back to the UK taxpayers, and how much money does it cost to entertain this man? It's a waste of taxpayers' hard-earned money, says Sharon from Staffordshire. Absolutely right. Talking about more wastes of public money, how about front page of The Sun, sacked Greg, this is Greg Wallace from MasterChef, it's war. Greg Wallace was last night at war with the BBC after it claimed 50 more people have made allegations against him. The 60-year-old was yesterday told he had been sacked as a MasterChef host following a 9-month misconduct probe. This is obviously the story about Greg Wallace, who seemed to have a little bit of difficulty working out how to behave in front of women and or sort of, you know, people who were guests on the show. And they go into pages 2 and 3. The thing I find astonishing is his statement, which he put out yesterday, in which he says basically he was hired by the BBC and MasterChef as the cheeky greengrocer, a real person with warmth, character, rough edges and all. For over 2 decades, that was part of the brand. But now in a sanitised world, that same personality is seen as a problem. But he then goes on to say, and this is the bit that I think is the most shocking and will be really probably appalling for people who perhaps suffer properly from various different problems. He says, my neurodiversity, now formally diagnosed as autism, was suspected and discussed by colleagues across countless seasons of MasterChef, yet nothing was done to investigate my disability or protect me from what I now realise was a dangerous environment. I mean, so is he now alleging that because of his disability, he had to keep taking his trousers down, had to keep grabbing women by the buttocks and breasts, and had to sort of keep making rather lewd jokes? Is that now a disability?
I don't know who's doing his PR. Whether it's somebody
he needs to just shut up and go away, doesn't he?
Yeah. I thought so. Yeah. I don't know. Just take it and go and do something on. Do something.
Just disappear for a while, and maybe you could probably come back by the time everybody's forgotten. But there's 50 new claims about his behaviour. 50. So there's another 50 claims. I just don't understand. He says he was in a dangerous environment. Dangerous for who? The women who he attacked? Yeah. Or dangerous for his autism because he couldn't help himself from just dropping his trousers every 5 minutes. Yeah. I've got autism. Have you? How do you know? I keep dropping my trousers. It's like some kind of carry-on film.
Yeah, and I don't. But I think the question's for the BBC here, because this is
because again, like Russell Brand, they knew what was going on.
They knew what was going on. There's a pattern of behaviour that's happened, that's continued.
It's not irregular, is it?
It's not irregular.
It's happening all the time.
But it's happening. It's happening season after season, and we've got 50 going, all the way, back to 2013. I'm looking here in the Sun, and you suddenly end up in this. It's now being, the BBC as to why was this allowed to continue? Right. Why didn't the BBC take action? Again, it's another question mark for what's going on at the BBC.
It's another question mark for Tim Davie, isn't it?
Yeah.
Who seems to be asked these questions every single day, and yet he continues to cling on to his job.
But the thing, it's endemic. I mean, Tim Davie is a Tory, and the jokes that I've heard from friends who work at the BBC is, we'll just get rid of him. Yeah. The sort of the blob within the BBC, the sort of the middle managers who really control things, will just like shove him out, make him take the blame for everything, and then they'll get somebody in who they really like, and then they'll go round again, and the BBC will just sort of continue the way it is, and nothing will actually get done, and nothing will actually change.
No, exactly right. Let's talk about the doctors, because that's on the front page of the Times, I believe. Basically, Labour are ruling out paying them any more. This is a real problem. It's going to be a huge problem, because if you remember, last year doctors were on strike all the way up to July. I think from the previous year they were on strike sort of on and off for about a year, 9 months to a year, crippling the NHS and making it really, really difficult for people to use the health service, making it really difficult for people to get doctors to complete operations that they'd promised to do. So now they're saying, having got 22%, as soon as West Street and Goiney gave them 22%, 30 billion quid straight down the Swanee, didn't go into the service at all. They're now asking for another 29%, and so now he's at war with them.
That's an 11 grand, by the way. The junior doctors. So that's £11,000
as a pay rise.
As a pay rise, it's not. So if you think, they got 22% last year, they're getting 5.4% this year.
Right.
And now they want, but they don't want the 5.4, they want 29%.
Yeah.
And everybody said, if you give them such a large pay rise, if you sit down and do this negotiation, they're only going to come back and ask for more.
Right.
And they've done exactly that, and patients are going to suffer.
And they said they would come back this year for it, and here they are.
Here they are.
It's not
there's no surprises.
unexpected, is it?
And the other thing I would say, Mike, is the trade union laws in this particular area are too weak.
Yeah.
Because actually, when you do the maths on this, fewer than half of junior doctors have actually supported this strike action. It's just a small militant wing within the junior doctors.
Marxist version, isn't it?
That have forced this over the line.
Yeah.
So if you
because there's loads of doctors who are not even in the BMA.
Yeah,
right.
It's 50,000 junior doctors.
Yeah.
Only 55% voted in this strike action, and actually 10% voted against. But if you could safely assume that those who didn't take part in this ballot wouldn't want to go out on strike. And actually, overall, that actually means that more than half of junior doctors don't support strike
Exactly
action.
right. I mean, I remember when the last strike was on, we used to talk to regularly talk to junior doctors who were actually working, who said, look, not only are we not on the picket line, we're actually doing work because that's what we want to do. Because basically bosses are now saying more strikes will lead to mass patient suffering, tens of thousands of appointments being cancelled, and jeopardising the 10-year NHS plan unveiled by the government only last week. Yeah. So even last week, the government was talking about, bringing the NHS back up to, a modern basis or something like that. Let's have a look at, we've got a clip, I think, from Wes Streeting. Have a look.
The BMA's ballot result from resident doctors is in, and it's really disappointing that despite the fact that a majority of resident doctors didn't actually vote for strike action, the BMA are now preparing for strike action. And it's completely unnecessary, not least because since this government came to office, resident doctors have had a pay rise of 28.9%, and this year alone had the highest pay award of the entire public sector.
Yeah, so he suddenly changed his tune, hasn't he, from last year? Because they didn't say last year what your acts have done is to cause people discomfort, pain, inability to actually see the people who need to help them to get their procedures, to get their operations done. Very, very much in favour of them, saying, we understand why you were on strike. Here's a load of money.
So in January 24, I looked this up. In January 2024, there was 6 days of strikes.
Yeah.
110,000 operations, elective treatments got missed. Keir Starmer,
just in that one
month, for one of those 6 days, 110,000. Keir Starmer, when he was speaking last week, what was his proudest achievement? Reducing NHS waiting lists. And actually, when you look, he's managed to reduce it from 7.4. I think it's reduced by about 7.
It's gone from 7.8 to 7.4 or something like that.
It's reduced by 250,000.
A couple of suitcases off the Titanic, as they say.
Exactly. And he's not made the progress he needs to make. But this is just going to mean that the waiting lists are going to go in completely the wrong direction, and that's going to be painful for people.
It is. Speaking of suitcases, actually, we've got a very funny clip to play you, but I don't know if it's ready yet, is it? Not sure it is ready. It's a clip of the French motorcade, which is very amusing. Let's get a voice note from Kitty.
Bonjour, Mike and Theo. It's Kitty from Kent here. I was just wondering if the mass rape of white girls by Pakistani Muslim men is actually just irregular sex, and if the prolific puffing of marijuana throughout our land is just irregular smoking. What we know is that these are criminal activities, as are the people coming in illegally, invading our south coast. And I think that people in positions of privilege, like Charles and Macron, they are causing the pot to boil over. It's simmering at a dangerous level in this country. People are angry, and their comments about it being irregular, it will just burst, and then we're all in a state. Something has got to change. These out-of-touch liberals need to shut up.
Kitty is so right. What a great voice note. Thank you so much for that. Do keep bringing them to us. 0344 499 1000. She's absolutely right. People are getting, I can feel it in every single sort of interaction that we have here on this show. You can feel the pulse of the nation. You can feel the mood of the nation, and it's not good. No. The mood of the nation is one of people who are fed up to the back teeth of being taken for granted, of being having the mickey taken out of them, paying for everything, seeing people getting stuff for nothing, seeing an unfair society unfolding before their very eyes, and then to watch this ridiculous pompous pageantry yesterday of people all dressed up to the nines like some kind of fancy dress party, you know, enjoying the finest wines and the fantastic, you know, food that was on offer at Windsor Castle. It's not a good look, is it?
No, there's not. And I think most people would expect, you know, we value the royal family in this country, and if they're going to exercise their soft power, then exercise the soft power for something that actually means something to people. You know, get a better result for the British people, not just we don't. You know, I think people are willing to pay.
Don't invite the fox into the hen house, right?
Precisely. You know, if you know, people willing to pay for the royal family, it brings in billions in terms of tourism, in terms of our standing in the world, but we also recognise that we want to see King Charles, Prince William, Catherine. We want them to. It's not a free lunch. They have to work hard. Their mother, you know, William's grandmother and Charles's mother worked fantastically hard in the interests of this country in order to secure our place in the world and get good deals, whether it be trade deals or securing our, you know, our standing on the world stage. And my problem with this is that Charles isn't doing that.
Right.
That isn't the net result of this, and we'll have more. We'll hear more today, and there'll be more ceremonies.
There's more pageantry going on.
More pageantry,
ceremony,
and so forth. But we're not getting what we need back. What we need back are for the boats to stop and for.
We've already given him 771 million quid.
And if he's not going to, I'd almost rather it that Emmanuel Macron just wrote a letter beforehand saying, "I'm not going to help you."
Right.
Done. Just write a letter beforehand.
Yeah, thanks very much for bringing me.
You know what? It's not in my
way.
interest. Can't be bothered.
Yeah.
Just like if they leave, actually, it's quite good for me. Just, you know, forget it, mate. And just write a letter. Just send us a letter to say we're sorry, and then just not turn up.
Yeah.
And then we can have Donald Trump in the autumn.
Yeah.
And actually get somebody who actually comes to this country and
who actually gets things done.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. John in Lincolnshire says, Mike, the tapestry is only coming because the French are doing up their museum, so we're doing them a favour storing it for free. Even then, we're getting the mickey taken out of us. And Margaret in Birmingham, what a speech, Mike and Theo. Starmer's fingerprints all over it. Even Zelensky gets yet another mention. Don't think our late Queen has read that load of old codswallop out. I don't think she would have done. And that's the thing. Now, we were talking about suitcases earlier. This is a remarkable clip. I'm going to show you this. This is the state of the French motorcade. This is as they're leaving, I presume, Windsor last night. You see the thing, the van drives off, right? The doors are open. There's bags falling out the back of it. And the sort of characters running about afterwards going, oh, sacre bleu, zut alors, we seem to have dropped our suitcases. And I don't know whether they came back for them, but let's just can we have a look at that? The doors, they drive off with the doors open, right? There he goes. And a bunch of bags fall out the back of the van. That's amazing. I mean, it's hardly high security, is it? A bit of irregular packing there, I think you can see. Anyway, coming up, we're going to be talking about the front page of the Daily Mail, in which Sarah Vine, who's on the show later on, says Keir Starmer is like Monty Python's Black Knight, barely able to nip at Macron's ankles. But also, a terrible story about the Post Office investigation. The Post Office accused of having blood on its hands. At least 13 people who were the victims of the Horizon IT scandal actually took their own lives. It's a shocking story. We'll bring you more on that coming up next.
earlier, I think the only reason that you've seen action from the French police and the border officials over there is because Emmanuel Macron knew that he's coming over here in the coming days, and that's the only reason they seem to have acted. Now, I think if the United Kingdom, and again, whether this is under the previous government or this government, if they really, really wanted to take action, they should have put their foot down and said, we, British cops, British border officials, will go over there and man those beaches. They will be patrolling those waters, walking up and down.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 6:52. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through, of course, until 10 o'clock. We've got much to do and plenty of time to do it. And Filling Commentary says, loving the show, and that even normally calm Theo is now sounding like he's about to blow. I even like listening to Dan Hodges now he's been turned. Keep up the good work, Mike. Labour can't last much longer, surely. I mean, it's been a terrible, terrible kind of year for them. And it just gets worse and worse and worse. Every single week and every single day now, it seems as though there's more problems. And somebody pointed out to me, Christian actually it was, that during the whole post office scandal, when all of these post office employees, whether they were sub-postmasters or sub-post mistresses, were being prosecuted, do you know who was in charge of the CPS when that was going on?
Keir Starmer.
Keir Starmer, yeah. So when all of these people, including the 13 people who killed themselves, who took their own lives, committed suicide, the post office had been accused yesterday of having blood on its hands because at least 13 people were driven to suicide by the Horizon IT scandal. And of course, as we say, guess who was prosecuting them? Keir Starmer.
Yeah.
Well done, Keir. Another chip off the old block.
Yeah. So, I mean, this story, I was just reading one of the case studies of a lady called Fiona McGowan on the inside of the paper, and she's one of those who took her own life. You know, she ended up her son Daryl described her as outgoing, lived life to the full, but of course she then got wrongly accused of stealing £30,000 and ended up taking an overdose in a hostel after her children were taken into care.
Yeah.
And it just,
because these people's lives were ruined, weren't they?
Completely devastated. And of course, it feels like these people, just those who deserve justice, they have to work so hard to get it. I mean, there are 10,000 now who are waiting for compensation, Mike.
Yeah.
And they want they are rightfully entitled to compensation.
And it's all going terribly slowly, isn't it?
But it's intentional. The reason it's going so slowly is, there is a calculation that by dragging out the payments of the compensation, that people will die, that they will lose the will to try and get this money that they're rightfully owed. And by the way, actually they're owed far, far more for what they've gone through.
Yeah.
But it just won't happen, and it's just what I find so unimaginably why frustrating, angering about this is there should be people going to prison for this.
They should be.
People should be should be behind
and
bars.
It's very possible that some of those people should be politicians. Let's have a look at Sir Wyn Williams, who's the chair of the Post Office Inquiry. Check it out.
Have inevitably suffered emotional turmoil and significant stress in consequence. Many businesses and homes have been lost. Bankruptcies have occurred. Marriage and families have been wrecked. Between 2000 and 2013 in England and Wales, and for some time after 2013 in Northern Ireland and Scotland, postmasters and others suffered the trauma of criminal prosecution, conviction and punishment. And for some, punishment meant lengthy periods of imprisonment. I received reports that some people held liable for shortfalls became ill as a consequence. Tragically, I heard too of people of whom it is said that they were driven to take their own lives.
Absolute scandal. Absolute scandal. We'll talk about this a little bit later on in the show. A couple of other big stories to talk about, of course. One on page 13 of The Sun, a little bit of a lighter note for everybody this morning. Coldplay are officially boring. You know, I've waited for a long time for this story to be written. 100 million album selling band have become less harmonically daring over time, according to a study that's been done. I think it's the Royal Society of Open Science.
Yeah, we already knew that, as the Sun reports, the page 13. You know, we already knew they were vanilla. You know, Chris Martin admitted last year, didn't he, that they were an easy target.
Yeah.
But apparently some boffins at Durham University, researchers, having compared their back catalogue to R.E.M., Radiohead, Patsy Cline, they've analysed a variety of songs, differed over time, and yes, they've come to the conclusion that whilst R.E.M. were adventurous, Coldplay became even more boring as their fame
They've definitely
grew.
got worse, haven't they?
Yeah.
I mean, I actually quite liked their first album. Their
isn't
first album was actually quite innovative and different. And when they first came out, everyone kind of went, "Oh, this is a bit weird. This is a bit unusual." You know, a bit sort of soft rock. But they've just, and also Chris Martin's so irritating, isn't he?
He's smug.
He's one of the most annoying people I think on the planet. One final one before we go to the news. I think you might be staying on for us as well. Is the Southport attacker. You know, the Southport inquiry opened yesterday as well, which is another thing that will probably haunt Sir Keir Starmer because of the way that he behaved during the whole thing. Basically, Sir Adrian Fulford, who was overseeing the hearings into the horrible, ghastly murder spree, said that they'd taken a decision, and I'm not going to claim credit for this, but we said way before everybody else, we're not going to keep naming this character, the assailant. I'm not going to name him now, but they've taken a decision at the inquiry not to name the killer. And I think that's a great thing. I think the families don't want to hear his name. They never want to see him. He's an absolute scumbag. He'd be better off being put to death, quite frankly. And the idea that they're not going to use his name, I think, is brilliant.
He wants the notoriety, doesn't he? And he's quite right that this decision's been taken so that he doesn't get that.
Right.
But I don't. In terms of what this inquiry does, I think it needs to get to it mustn't shy away from the appalling murders. It mustn't that happened, and it's got to get to the root of the failings.
And we've got to get to the failings as to
why this happened.
Because they knew that this guy had been stopped by his own father at least once and possibly twice from going on a killing spree, you know, some weeks before he actually did the real one.
And this isn't the phrase they like to use in these cases is missed opportunities.
Yeah.
In actual fact, they knew how dangerous this man was, and why was he
not stopped? Yeah, Theo, thank you very much indeed. A great look at the first few stories in the papers today. Theo's going to stay with us because we've got plenty to talk about the state of this government. Not only are they now with a disapproval rating of 67%, but the US trade deal hasn't even been done. The tariff is going to go back on steel in the next couple of days because they've missed the deadline. Is there anything that this government can get right? Answers on a postcard, please. This is, of course, Morning Glory. We'll be back after the news. Good evening and welcome to Plank of the Week. It's the one show where you do not have to be worried about judgmental people because we'll do all the judging for you. Let's just have a look at how Humsley Useless is now spending his time.
There goes your career, mate.
Over there a bit is over towards where all the migrants come in. He's jumping there. There he goes. He goes over the bar.
Hello,
and
lady.
Unfortunately, it catches on his Johnson.
If he's Plank of the Week, he's got a sizable plank.
That's a whole different show.
Plank of the Week, Fridays at 7 on Talk.
Hi, I'm Kevin O'Sullivan, and I've got a message for you. Welcome back to this blockbuster edition of What Just Happened. It really is a good one, I think. It's so funny.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome to Morning Glory, coming up to 3 minutes past 7. I'm Mike Graham, and of course, welcome to the biggest show that there ever was on breakfast. It's Morning Glory. We're here with you until 10 o'clock in the morning. Theo Usherwood's here with us as well. We're going to look through some of the stories on the front pages today and inside, and look at what is going on between Emmanuel Macron and Keir Starmer. Keir Starmer last night wasn't very much in view, really. It was all about King Charles and Emmanuel Macron explaining how much they loved each other and how much in common we have with the French and how wonderful it all is. Unfortunately, I'm afraid, they kept using the word irregular migration, which has rather wound me up. So we'll be playing you that as well as all sorts of other clips this morning to prove to you once again that this government does not know what it is doing. We've got a new breaking news story out saying that 67% of the nation now disapproves of this government. Let's get a voice note from Andy.
Yeah, these migrants and whatever they're going on about, nothing's going to happen, is it really? I mean, yeah, you're talking about the irregular migrants, which is an insult to us, our intelligence, really. Really, they are regular illegal migrants because they're illegal and it's happening on a regular spell, i.e. every day.
Yeah, I mean, how can you even use the word irregular? Because one, it's not irregular, it's regular, it's happening every day, and two, they're illegal. So they are regular illegal migrants, technically speaking, and what they are not is irregular migrants. We'll be playing you those clips over the course of the show this morning. Also, we'll be talking about the junior doctors. They want to go on strike again. They voted to do so yesterday, even though less than half of them who actually work in the NHS voted to strike. They will be going out on strike for possibly 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months. There's the migrant tracker there. 44,359 people so far coming into this country illegally. That's for you, Starmer and Charles and Macron, illegally since the start of the Labour government in July the 4th of last year. Also, Greg Wallace on the front page of The Sun. He's claiming that he's going to have a war with the BBC after they sacked him yesterday following a 9-month investigation into his rather spurious conduct. He's claiming that he's got a disability, and that's what makes him drop his trousers so regularly in front of unsuspecting women. Nobody's quite sure why that is. 0344 499 1000. Also, net zero is going to cost us £800 billion by 2050. That's good, isn't it? Marvellous. What a fantastic piece of news. And officially, we've got this for you. Coldplay are boring, as if you didn't know. 5 minutes past 7. Let's get it on. Welcome to Morning Glory. Joanna from Salisbury says, so, Mike, 67% of people of the country don't want the government. Does that mean 33% are irregular migrants enjoying our hospitality? I don't know, but it's a very good question. Let's have a voice note from Brian.
Morning, Mike. Brian from Southend. This old deal Starmer's trying to push through with Macron, whatever his bloody name is, it could be scuppered by the EU, apparently, because the other countries say that if we push them back to France and one back to France, France can send them back to where they entered the EU from, what country they entered the EU from. So why the bloody hell can't we do that with France then and just chuck them back to them? Eh? I can't bloody understand it.
I know, it doesn't make any sense. None of it makes any sense. Theo Usher is here. Theo, very good morning to you. Thanks for staying with us. There's some very odd things going on with this summit. People were asking me yesterday, why on earth are we having a summit? Why are we hosting Emmanuel Macron? He's clearly not going to be able to do anything to stop the illegal migration wave of people coming here. He's not willing to do it, even if he wanted to, even if he could do something. And so it's all sort of a bit of much ado about nothing, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we would have hoped that we'd actually get, for the red carpet treatment, we're a 3-day state visit for Emmanuel Macron to this country, banquets at Windsor Castle, speeches in the Houses of Parliament, that in return that Emmanuel Macron might turn around and say, well, actually, I recognise there's a problem here with upwards of 1,000 migrants a day on some days when the weather's fair crossing the English Channel, that actually will put in a bit more effort than what we've seen previously in return for £750 million that we've given the French to stop the boats crossing in the first place. But he turned up yesterday to Parliament and said, well, actually, if you want to stop the boats, you should do more, because we can see that we're a soft touch.
We're making it too easy for them to come, aren't we?
We make it too easy for them to come, and also when they're here, we make it too easy for them to work on the black market. We've seen, the front page of the Sun in recent, multiple front pages of the Sun in terms of their investigations into, delivery riders, having actually crossed the English Channel and then using fake accounts. You've got the accommodation, of course, the costs that, it's costing upwards of £5-6 million a day.
And now it looks as though not only are we giving people room in hotels, but we're also now giving them even longer-term deals to stay here by giving them accommodation, which is not a hotel, but which is an actual house.
Yeah, a house of multiple occupancy. It goes on, and of course, many of these migrants claim the right to remain in this country, and then ultimately they can get British citizenship from that. And Emmanuel Macron's saying, actually, sort your own house before you come knocking on my door to try and sort this all out. And as your correspondent just said there, we have a problem in that, we might want to strike this deal, but there are other European nations like Cyprus, Greece, Italy, Spain in the south, where actually the migrants first arrived, are saying, hang on a moment, we know exactly what's going to happen when Britain sends migrants back in this one in, one out deal, if this deal goes ahead, is that actually the French are just going to pass them back to us. And that's something that we don't want. So it suits the European Union all round if Emmanuel Macron just says, actually, you can cross the English Channel. It's fine for them, and he's got no intention, no motivation to change it at all.
And I'm sure the European Union, knowing them as we do, would be more than happy to just sit in the back rooms and say to each other, they left us, let's just dump a load of migrants on them. Why would we help them actually stop that from happening? And they won't. Let's have a look at what they both said last night. King Charles and Emmanuel Macron were both attending a state dinner in Windsor Castle. Here's Emmanuel Macron first off. See if you can spot the word that we really hate.
France and the United Kingdom have a shared responsibility to address irregular migration with humanity, solidarity and firmness. The decisions that we will take at our bilateral summit will respond to our aims for cooperation and tangible results on these major issues. But our objective, very clearly, is to have the best ever cooperation between our two countries in order to fix today what is a burden for our two countries.
And as Quentin Letts says in the Daily Mail today, 10 minutes in, Macron's accent was becoming a touch hello. By the end, we were in Inspector Clouseau territory. This migrant, irregular migrant thing, do you know? It's not so good. This is irregular.
This was a gorge tester of a performance, the speech of a sashaying sloppist, hairy froglet hands on naked thigh stuff, properly shuddersome.
Brilliant. And of course the King then did the same thing. You will have noticed, of course, the word that really, really annoys me and has been annoying me since the beginning of this show is the word irregular when it comes to migration. Here's King Charles doing the same bleeding thing.
Our diplomats will work together to defend the international rule of law and the multilateral system. Our security services and police will go further still to protect us against the profound challenges of terrorism, organised crime, cyber attacks, and, of course, irregular migration across the English Channel.
It's not irregular. I don't know what I'm going to do about this. I'm going to have to play this all day. It's going to wind me up all bleeding day. Why do they insist on using the wrong term?
They use it because they want you to... If you say something's illegal, then your listeners, most ordinary people, think, well, a crime's being committed.
Yeah, which it is.
And so we ended up in a situation where if you have 800 people arrive illegally in this country every, let's say, on any given day, I'm sure they're looking outside the weather's fair today. I'm sure when we get the figures through from today, or we get the figures through from yesterday, you will see that there are a high number of people who've crossed the channel illegally, and that
on a very regular basis.
On the Home Office, what the Home Office wouldn't want to think is that 700 crimes are being committed because 700 people have entered the country illegally.
But in fact, that is the case. And I mean, there's no point in renaming it. It's a bit like saying, you know, I remember when they invented the word mugging, you know, it didn't change the fact that people were being basically attacked and having things stolen from them.
Yeah.
You know, it became a word which was not a positive word. But by the same token, you know, if a crime is being committed every time somebody breaks into this country, which is what they're doing, just call it what it is. You know, people aren't going to think they're not doing something illegal because you don't call it illegal.
But
everybody knows what's going on.
But everybody knows what's going on. Everybody can see what's going on. You can, and people aren't just seeing it because they're listening to your show or they're picking up the newspapers.
Right.
People are seeing it in their communities where
every time they walk around.
Every time they walk around, and they see it. And what they're trying to do is, it effectively becomes, using this word, it effectively becomes a way of gaslighting people.
Yeah.
So they're saying, actually, you know what?
And people are getting fed up with that.
Yeah, people
really
don't like
fed
it.
up. Let's have a look at Robert Jenrick. He was in the House of Commons yesterday talking to Justice Secretary Shabana Mahmood.
In the year since Labour took office, can the Justice Secretary tell us how many individuals have been prosecuted for smuggling people in on small boats?
So state.
Well, I don't have those figures directly to hand, but I'm sure that if they are available, I can write to him with those details.
General.
Well, I asked the Justice Secretary a very simple question about one of the biggest challenges facing our country right now, and the whole House could see that she didn't have a clue. Well, it's not just the pathetically low levels of prosecutions under her watch. It's also the fact that the Justice Secretary has waved through guidelines to shorten sentences for immigration offences. Under the Nationality and Borders Act, the most serious offence for facilitation carries a life sentence, but she is watering it down to between 10 and 16 years. Instead of smashing the gangs, she's slashing the sentences. Well, why won't she do something for once and stop this?
Well, it's a pretty good attack line, that, isn't it? You know, just ask a question about a fact that can be easily answered, and the government can't answer it because they know what? They haven't prosecuted anyone.
But you would think that if they wanted to, you know, their whole slogan is "smash the gangs," right? They've got an urgent question. There's plenty of warning with an urgent question that is going. You have, you know, a minister will have several hours to you know, muster her you know, civil servants. Go away.
It's not as though there's thousands of them, so you have to actually add up a big number. There's maybe one or two.
You know, it's the obvious question. Go away and find the answer so that you can provide that answer to the opposition. Because at least if she went away and found the answer, then you could at least say that they've done the research. They've done the. They've gone away and they've taken this. You know, they recognise there's a problem. But by simply saying I'm going to write to Robert Jenrick, it makes it sound as if it's just not a priority. And maybe that's the case. Maybe it just isn't a priority in terms of for Shabana Mahmood, the Justice Secretary, when it comes to prosecuting the ringleaders of. And it is a vile trade in.
It is ghastly.
People are losing their lives.
But we know that they're doing nothing about it. You know, because whenever they do have something to crow about, they crow about it. You might remember Keir Starmer some months ago was crowing about the fact that they'd arrested some bloke who was very, very heavily involved in supplying boat parts to these dinghy merchants. And they said they'd arrested him and it was going to have a massive effect on the people snuggling guns, gangs, guns, whatever. And of course it had no visible evidence that was actually anything at all.
No.
We haven't got that clip already, have we? And we might have it. No, we'll come back to that. But, you know, so there's one person. And of course, ever since that one person was actually arrested, it's had zero effect on the numbers of people coming over. So it's very clear that it's not about arresting just one person. You're going to arrest a load of people, and they haven't arrested anyone.
And even if they arrest a load of people, then these are organised criminals. They're smart people. They're just going to replace them. What they have to do, what the government has to do, is it has to stop the demand for people wanting to come to this country. It has to stop the the incentive for people to come to this country. And we did have an disincentive to come to this country, and that disincentive was the Rwanda scheme. It wasn't as effective. Well, it wasn't effective at all. It was introduced by the Conservatives.
Well, it was, to be fair, it was never really given a chance.
And it was, and they needed, but ultimately they need to come up with a plan whether they're going to reform the European Convention on Human Rights so they can actually implement something similar to the Rwanda scheme. But they need to get on top of it quickly, because this time is running out. And Keir Starmer, we're discussing the net approval ratings down to -67.
Yeah.
This government is deeply unpopular out there in the country, and unless they sort this particular problem out, then people are going to be, it seeps into every area of government. You cut our winter fuel allowance, but you're paying for migrants to live in hotels in my constituency. You're cutting, you want to cut benefits for the most disabled. Yes, but you're paying £8 million a day, or it's £7 million a day for migrants to stay in hotels.
No, it's like £8 billion a year or something like that, right?
It's billions of pounds a year, and people feel this deep grievance that we're in this situation where we're spending so much money failing to get to grips with this problem, but at the same time we're seeing disability benefits cut.
They're desperate to find places to save money. Well, here's somewhere where they could save money by simply not doing it, and it's net zero. Page 10 of the Sun this morning: the dash to net zero will cost an economy-sapping £800 billion by 2050, and that's basically coming from the Office of Budget Responsibility.
Yeah, and
the OBR is telling us this.
This is buried in the document that was released yesterday, which found that basically the country's going bust. National debt expected to hit 270% of GDP by the 2070s, and now they've looked into, one of the things they've looked into is the cost of net zero, and it's costing £800 billion by 2050. Rachel Reeves, she needs to save. And it's been told an annual £30 billion is going to be needed just to hit green targets. Now, that's all very well. It's not just in terms of cost of the government. It's also just in terms of cost on your bills.
They're ordinary men and women in the country.
You pay levies on top of your bills to pay for green energy in order to hit this net zero target, and it also makes us much more vulnerable because there is a lag between when these wind farms are going to be actually built and created, and we're having to import energy when actually we've got, in the North Sea, we've got there's oil ready to be drilled and licences be provided, but the government's absolutely adamant that it won't do it.
Yeah, incredible. And meanwhile, just one final thing, Theo, because it's so irrelevant, it seems to me, that happened yesterday in Parliament. MPs have backed plans to set up the independent football regulator and roll out operating licences for football clubs. They voted 415 to 98, a majority of 317, to pass the Football Governance Bill at the third reading. It's now cleared the Commons and is poised to become law. I mean, I don't know anyone that thinks that there's any point in doing it.
No.
Why are they bothering?
I don't. There are already strict rules in place, and we're hearing, all the time about sanctions that have been imposed on those who've broken the laws in terms of financial fair play. I'm not sure this is the top priority.
Well, Premier League. But we're always being told, look, we can't push this particular bill through because we haven't got parliamentary time. We can't get to this really, really important issue because we haven't got any parliamentary time. And they waste a load of time on this nonsense.
The Premier League is one of our best exports. Yeah. People all over the world watch Premier League football. The reason that clubs can go to to America or to the Southeast Asia or whatever and play games is because that's where they like the Premier League is the league that those fans like to watch. Yeah. And whenever you get government intervention in something like that, it never spills. It's never good news, is it?
No, it never is. Theo, good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Oh, we've got a quick clip before we go. Lisa Nandy talking about football fans. Oh, look.
And finally, I want to address our football fans, who are the best in the world. We are doing this for you, because for too long you have been treated as an afterthought at best or a nuisance at worst in a game that is only great because of you.
Yeah, because that's what people say all the time, isn't it? English football fans are the best in the world. Wherever they go, they get such a warm welcome from the police and other people in various other places where, international games are taking place. They also voted, apparently, yesterday, massively against allowing 10 Premier League games to be broadcast for free.
Yeah.
So it's hardly, the voice of the people stuff, is it?
Yeah.
Shocking. Absolutely shocking. 0344 499 1000 is the number. Theo Usherwood, thank you very much indeed. It's 21 minutes past 7. This is Morning Glory.
Some breaking news this morning revealed that under the Terrorist Act, 242 people were arrested in the year to June of this year.
As something you can indulge in, as to all the people who aren't going to prison because, well, there's no prison spaces.
So this is a talk exclusive we've been looking at.
I said, you take these cuffs off me and speak to me like a human being rather than a common criminal.
You're just left wondering, does these people who lead us actually hate Britain? Yeah. Do they not love our country and everything that we've stood for?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham, coming up to 25 minutes past 7. Of course, we are here all the way through until 10 o'clock. A bit of breaking news overnight. 67% of people in this country, according to a YouGov poll, disapprove of the government. Absolute geniuses, aren't they? They are so unpopular. Absolutely and utterly ridiculous how bad this government is. There's a little graph there for you that shows exactly just how, with every passing week, the government gets more and more and more unpopular. Let's get a voice note from Louise.
Morning, Mike. Louise from Ipswich. Two quick things. One, the one in, one out, those that are coming have connections, which means they've got connections, which means they're allowed in, allowed to settle, they'll be able to bring their extended family. Secondly, do you remember when there was that huge wave that were coming up through Greece, and the president of Hungary threw up the huge barbed wire rolls to stop people coming through, and he just said no. And then there was a bit of a discussion, and because Germany were going to take them, he allowed 2 or 3 coachloads to come through, but they were escorted, not allowed to stop. They had to fill up with petrol, and they had to fly through Hungary under armed escort. He got them through. He was just a passage. That was it. And then the barbed wire went back up again. Can't we do something like that?
Well, you'd like to think so, wouldn't you? But apparently it's not beyond the wit of man to come up with these things in the government, because all they do is they invite Emmanuel Macron over for a state visit, for a summit, and so that they can have lots and lots of lovely, cosy chats. Today, I think, Keir Starmer and Emmanuel Macron are going to be meeting up and discussing precisely what they can do about illegal migration. Well, first of all, they should stop calling it irregular migration. That would be a start. Susan from Essex says, I would like to thank you for showing on TV the anger of the whole country with this irregular government. Keep up the great work. And Dave says, so when the junior doctors' demands aren't met, will they introduce irregular working? Says Dave in Aberdeen. Yeah, very good question. Let's talk now to Chirag Sidpura, who's a former sub-postmaster. The story this morning on the front pages of some of the papers, and certainly covered all over the place inside, is this terrible suggestion that the post office has actually got blood on its hands because there were at least 13 people who worked as postmasters, sub-postmasters, sub-postmistresses as well, who took their own lives as a result of the Horizon IT scandal. Chirag, a very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Thanks so much for joining us. This is a terrible story which still seems to have no real end in sight. You know, I'm looking at the Daily Mail's front page today, which says the post office has blood on its hands, but it also says inside that the torturous claims process means up to 10,000 people are still waiting for compensation.
Yeah, it was yesterday that the Sir Williams, who'd chaired the inquiry, has written volume 1 of his report, which outlines all the issues that he's put forward to Parliament to try and speed things up. But it's just been horrifically slow. It just causes all sorts of problems.
It really does. And what's been your situation over the past sort of couple of years since these inquiries have been ongoing? Have you been involved in them?
Yeah, so I'm a core participant in the public inquiry. I put a claim in through the HSS scheme, which is the historical shortfall scheme, which according to Selwyn Williams and his report from yesterday, is a totally flawed scheme.
It really is. We've got a little clip of the Post Office Inquiry Chair, as you say, Sir Win Williams. Have a look at this.
Many people have inevitably suffered emotional turmoil and significant stress in consequence. Many businesses and homes have been lost. Bankruptcies have occurred. Marriage and families have been wrecked. Between 2000 and 2013 in England and Wales, and for some time after 2013 in Northern Ireland and Scotland, postmasters and others suffered the trauma of criminal prosecution, conviction and punishment. And for some, punishment meant lengthy periods of imprisonment. I received reports that some people held liable for shortfalls became ill as a consequence. Tragically, I heard too of people of whom it is said that they were driven to take their own lives.
It is a terrible, terrible toll. What's your view of how this inquiry is going at the moment, Chirag?
I personally have full faith in the public inquiry. It's Selwyn Williams and his team are doing a phenomenal job. So much of has actually come out through the public inquiry, and if it wasn't for the public inquiry, then majority of the information would never have surfaced.
Yes, indeed. And what's the time frame that you're expecting this all to kind of be sorted out in, as it were?
I honestly couldn't say, because the government are just taking their time over everything, and ultimately it is the government.
Yeah. And why do you think that is? Why can't they just make... I mean, they seem to be capable of making very fast decisions when they want to. You know, when they suddenly decided to put VAT on private schools, bang, it's straight away. When they decided to take a winter fuel allowance away from pensioners, bang, they did it the next day. You know, they could do this quicker, couldn't they?
They 100%. They could definitely do a lot of things. They could clear all these claims virtually overnight if they really wanted to. But I'm not sure why they're actually delaying it. There just is no probable cause for delaying it.
No, there really isn't. And you were falsely accused of stealing more than £50,000 due to that faulty Horizon system. Basically, tell us a little bit about how that affected you and what you went through.
I had an audit done on the 10th of October 2017. Managed to get the money repaid pretty much immediately. I was then put through a criminal interview under caution, which then my file got sent over to senior security for charging advice.
Yeah.
Even though the money was repaid, they still tried to prosecute to try and find something to make a example out of me, I suppose.
Yeah.
But there was insufficient evidence, so there was no further action. But it was just the most horrific part of my life ever.
And were you ever offered any compensation?
I've had an offer. As I've had to go through the historical shortfall scheme, but it's nowhere near what it should be. The people that are assessing it, I don't seem to think they grasp the justification of the loss, the heads of losses.
Yeah, it is incredible. It's an incredible story. Well, listen, all I can say, Chirag, is thank you so much for talking to us, and thank you for your patience waiting for somebody to actually apologise to you and offer you some kind of recompense for all the things that you've had to go through. Chirag Sidhpura, the former sub-postmaster, he was accused of stealing £50,000 from the Farncombe Post Office in 2013, basically by those people who were investigating why the Horizon IT system wasn't working properly. Absolutely shameful. This government should roll out the red carpet for Poland, says Theresa, who is a Pole. Or better still, have a Zoom call and get some tips on how to safeguard its borders. Poland has deployed the military on its Lithuanian and German borders to prevent the dumping of the illegals. Better still, a lot of ordinary people joined in. Absolutely right. Ian from Lancashire says they are diluting the problem using irregular instead of illegal. Let's see if they carry on using irregular. If so, it is a plan to control the narrative. I think that's right. And Bill in Cheshire on illegal immigrants says all the focus is on the daily boat arrivals. How many others are coming in on lorries and other routes? Does anybody know? There are never any reports on TV about stowaways anymore. I can't believe it's just stopped. Well, Bill, what we can tell you is that just anecdotally, we saw a long-distance lorry driver ring into the show last Friday, I think it was, who basically told us that he had pulled up into a service station somewhere near Cambridge, and he'd watched the lorry in front of him stop just ahead of him, and 4 illegal migrants jumped out the back of it and ran into the sort of woods next door. And I said to him, does this happen all the time? And he went, yeah, I see it pretty much every day, at least 2 or 3 times a week minimum. Sometimes more than that. Plenty of people are still coming on lorries and nobody knows where they're going and nobody knows who they are and nobody knows where they're from. Just ridiculous. Let's get a voice note from Kevin.
Morning, Mike. Kevin in Sheffield. So many things are making me angry this morning. This ridiculous visit by a lame duck President Macron, just farcical. What's the point of it? I'm getting a bit fed up with people telling me that France are great friends of Britain. They've never been great friends. We've had a lot of wars with France in the past, so I don't see him as a friend and never will. But also the King. This King does my head in. He's so transparent in his politics. Yeah. If he were in Parliament, he'd be a Lib Dem stroke Green MP. And boy, do we know that. Queen Elizabeth, God bless her, we never knew her politics. She actually come across as though she cared about British people.
Yeah. Absolutely great point, Kevin. Yeah, France has never been our friend. We've had wars with them, for heaven's sake, right? We had to rescue them in the Second World War because they were too busy, kowtowing to the Nazis because they didn't want anybody to blow up Paris. They're not helping with the migrant problem, and they never will. They don't want to help. They're not helping with the fact that Britain's being punished because we decided to vote to leave the European Union. They're still saying that that's the biggest mistake that Britain ever made. Emmanuel Macron is not our friend, ladies and gentlemen. And on the King, as Kevin says, we know what his politics are. He would be a Lib Dem. He would be a Green. He shouldn't be showing us his political views. He should not be doing it. And he should certainly not be using the word irregular instead of illegal. I might write him a letter, actually, and say, given that, we all speak the King's English, may I point out to you that you're misusing a particular word, an adjective, which is called irregular, because irregular means something that doesn't happen very often, something that doesn't happen on a regular basis. It's not regular. Well, the one bloody thing that's regular is the numbers of people coming to this country on small boats every single bleeding day that they can because they want to. That's called something that's regular. It's not irregular. Sort yourself out, King. 7:37.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's coming up to 7:38. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until 10 o'clock, of course. David from Wigan says the British people mean absolutely nothing to the establishment, and they all show us that we mean nothing at all. I just don't know why the entire elite have turned on us so badly, but the British people now feel like we are worth nothing and made to feel like, why do you exist? It feels like if you're British, you're branded for life as a no one. Cheers, Mike. Have a great day. Yeah, I know. I think it's really appalling, isn't it? Morning, Mike. Jason in Hastings says, historians are pretty sure that the Bayeux Tapestry was made in Canterbury. It should be us lending it to the French. That tapestry should be in Hastings permanently. It's ours. Well, I don't know about that. It was certainly commissioned, I believe, by a French nobleman, the Duke of Normandy or somebody like that, who wanted to put himself right front and centre of the Battle of Hastings, and he wanted to have a depiction of himself in it. Which is apparently untrue, and it shouldn't have been done like that, but I think it's French. I don't think we belong to it, but you never know. Gavin Mortimer might know. Gavin's a French correspondent for The Spectator, of course. Gavin, very good morning to you, sir.
Morning, Mike. How are you?
Yeah, very well indeed. So apparently we're going to get the Bayeux Tapestry for a few weeks. Some people are suggesting to me it's only because they're taking it out of the museum and they need somewhere to store it. They're not exactly giving us any favours here. And Emmanuel Macron yesterday more or less said, there's nothing we can do. You know, they're going to sit down today and supposedly try and come up with a plan to stop the illegal migration of people coming from France to Britain. But he's basically said, look, you're too nice to them. You're giving them too much of an easy ride. That's why they're coming.
Yeah, this has been a French complaint going back to the days of Sanguet and the jungle 25 years ago, that Britain is so attractive. It's a paradise. It's a benefits paradise. That's why so many illegal immigrants make the journey. And you know, the French don't care. It's not in France's interest to solve this. They've got about an estimated 900,000 illegal immigrants in their own country. So the more that can go across the channel and make it Britain's problem, the better. Macron's not up for re-election in 2027, so frankly he doesn't care. Don't expect any favours from France.
No, I mean, we never do. I mean, it's kind of ludicrous point that's being made here, you know. And also what really annoyed me was watching Emmanuel Macron and King Charles, both of them, using that dreaded term irregular migration instead of illegal migration.
Well, this is what links Keir Starmer, Emmanuel Macron and King Charles. They're progressives. They think exactly the same on whether it's the green issue or whether it's free movement. And as your listener said just a minute ago, Charles Warrior politician would be a green stroke Lib Dem.
Yeah.
Macron, you know, was a socialist in his youth before becoming a centrist, but he is essentially at heart a socialist, just like Keir Starmer. And so it's absolutely farcical to imagine you've actually got now leading Britain and France, the two most left-wing leaders this century. So this problem is not going to be solved. No. And frankly, it's quite interesting actually, Mike. This state visit has really been sparsely covered in the French media. That's because of Macron's unpopularity. I saw there just before coming on air that poll that said the Starmer government has a 13% approval rating. Macron's is down to 21, which is practically a record low. So these are two leaders widely despised by their people, and they're so out of touch. And this another point to make is that Charles doesn't have the aura of his mother.
No,
and
he really doesn't.
No, the French were in awe of Elizabeth. She was more popular, really, frankly, than most French presidents. Charles, they look at him and just see a rather limp man.
Yeah, I think that is the tragedy of it all. And he can't hide his politics either, which I wish he would do, because he never knew what the Queen thought about anything, but we know exactly what he thinks about everything.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and that's that. The Queen had this air of mystique about her, which, as you said, you didn't know really her politics. Quite rightly, that's not her job. But Charles just can't help making it obvious what he thinks. And this is why he gets on so well with Macron. And but this whole state visit, it's not really been covered much in the French media. They've got more pressing issues, and also the French know, Mike, now that Macron don't believe anything he says. He talks the talk, but he never walks the walk. And frankly, I listened to what he said yesterday to Parliament about illegal immigration, or as he would say, irregular movements, and it was very similar to what he said in his first major speech as president in September 2017. He said, "Oh, it was a burden." He used the word treating it with humanity, but we must control our borders. And he actually is the president who's overseen the greatest number of illegal and legal migration to France. It's completely out of control. And as in Britain, it's fascinating to see that the surveys show that it's almost identical. About 75% of the French population, same in the UK, are at their wits' end and they want their borders back.
Yeah, and so say all of us. Gavin, great to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. We will speak to you again soon. Gavin Mortimer, French correspondent at The Spectator. One from Steve, who says this: if Macron, Starmer and his political stooge Charles call it illegal migration, then by definition it's people breaking the law and they'd have to take responsibility to sort it out. And one from John in Bexley Heath, who says, Mike, sod it, I think I'll take a day off today and go and do some irregular shopping. Yeah, I understand what you mean. I presume by that you mean a bit of shoplifting. Let's go to the phones, though, because Trevor is in Hampshire. He's got a story to tell us about the seas of this great nation of ours. Trevor, very good morning to you.
Oh, good morning, Mike.
Thanks very much for joining us. You're a fisherman, I understand.
No, I'm not a fisherman. I'm a yachtsman.
Oh, you're a yachtsman. Sorry, carry on. Tell us what you know.
Well, about 30 years ago, the French introduced a law making it compulsory for all boats in French waters to be registered,
right,
and to have the registration number on the back of the boat. And also they required you to have a certificate of competency to be able to drive a boat in France.
Yeah.
So when you take a small boat over to France, and I do frequently, every time you go to a port, your papers are checked, that the boat is registered, and that you've got this certificate of competency. If not, there are penalties. Now, the French law is that. So consequently, the French could apply that law to these dinghies because none of them are registered.
No, of course.
And they certainly haven't got any certificates of competency.
And they could then presumably arrest the pilot of said boat.
Yes.
But they don't bother.
No.
Yeah. And also the bit I don't get as well is that when you see the French Navy sometimes, or the French Coast Guard, escorting these dinghies into sort of what you might call international waters, they basically sort of point them in the direction of Britain and say, just keep going and somebody will come and rescue you.
Oh, yeah, but then the boats aren't registered. They haven't got this certificate.
Right.
So consequently, when the yachtsman goes over there, he gets asked for the papers and everyone makes sure that they've got the papers. But the migrants are given carte blanche.
Given carte blanche, yeah. Amazing.
That is also two-tier policing in France.
I was going to say, it's two-tier all over again, isn't it? Great piece of information, Trevor. Thank you very much indeed. Trevor basically saying that these boats are illegal by their very nature because they're not properly licensed. So why doesn't the French authorities do something about that? Let's get a voice note from Diane on the football.
You were talking about the football bill. Well, I've been a supporter of football for 50-odd years. But I think the reason they passed that bill is in the word licence, because what they're going to do is they're going to use it as a money-making activity. They're going to charge for licences. Maybe not now, in the future, they'll start charging for licences. And some small clubs, it's going to end up being a real problem to have to pay the licence fee to have a football club. That's why they're doing it, so that they can kill football, because that's one of the last places, once pubs are gone, where normal people can get together, and I think that's what's going to happen in the future. Great show, Mike. Diane from Southend.
Diane from Southend, thanks very much indeed for that. Yeah, I don't know what they're doing getting involved in the whole football business. It really doesn't seem to make any sense to me, but that, as you say, Diane, might just be the reason. Because they want to control it, because they want to shut it down, because they want to try and make sure that nobody has anything fun that they can do without paying through the nose for it. Absolutely ridiculous. 7:48.
Incidentally, I don't blame the French for much of this. I think they're doing what a sensible country would do, which is doing what they can not to let more migrants in and to get rid of them wherever they can, even if it's over the channel to England.
Yeah.
So I don't blame the French. And this French mayor said, it's not us doing all this. It's not us stopping, failing to stop the migrants. They go over to your country, you give them free legal aid, you give them somewhere to live.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, coming up to 10 minutes to 8. I'm Mike Gray with you all the way through until 10 o'clock. I'm rather surprised Keir Starmer didn't leap out of the bushes to recover Macron's baggage after he did some litter picking when he met Trump last week. Donald Trump, funnily enough, of course, very much in the news yesterday. We've got a couple of clips to play just before we talk to Lord Bethell, former Conservative Health Minister, about the doctors' strike. This is Trump being asked a question about Jeffrey Epstein yesterday.
Also, could you say why there was a minute missing from the jailhouse tape on the night of his death?
Sure, if I could I just interrupt for 1 second? Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? This guy's been talked about for years. You're asking, we have Texas, we have this, we have all of the things. And are people still talking about this guy, this creep? That is unbelievable. Do you want to waste the time, and do you feel like answering?
I don't mind answering.
I mean, I can't believe you're asking a question on Epstein at a time like this, where we're having some of the greatest success and also tragedy with what happened in Texas. It just seems like a desecration.
Yeah, I mean, his point being, of course, that they've been talking about the terrible flooding that's been going on in Texas. But it seems a bit odd that he doesn't want to take any questions on it, doesn't it? I don't know. Let's talk to Lord Bethell, former Conservative Health Minister. We learned the news yesterday that the BMA, that sort of Marxist organisation pretending to be a doctors' association, but is really a trade union, has voted once again to go out on strike. So doctors will once again cripple the NHS. Wes Streeting says the public will never forgive them. Lord Bethell, very good morning to you.
Mike, I feel like I will never forgive them as well. It is absolutely heartbreaking what's happened.
Yeah, and it is ridiculous given what happened last year. You know, the Labour Party got in, they said we're going to sort out the health crisis once and for all, we're going to pay the junior doctors the money they want. They gave them 22%, and everybody, including me, said, you know what's going to happen here, they're going to come back for more in the new year, and sure enough, you know, they waited till July, but they're coming back for more. 29% they want now.
I know, it's so frustrating. Everyone warned the Department for Health that this was going to happen. There was a big appeal that this pay rise should be linked to performance and to changes in working arrangements. Yeah. My goodness, the NHS needs that. It needs productivity gains and modernisation. They went in with lots of goodwill to try and settle this dispute. I kind of understand the pressure. But now the doctors have come back for more. Don't they realise that there just isn't any more money?
Yeah. Right, and I mean, even if there is more money, which you know, it's been dropped already into the sort of the black hole that is the NHS. I mean, I think it was in the spring statement, wasn't it, that Rachel Reeves said she's going to drop another 30 billion into the NHS, which even the NHS said won't even make any difference. It won't touch the sides because it's just a massive black hole where everything just disappears.
Well, I wouldn't quite put it like that. There's 30 billion is going in to try to use things like technology to improve productivity and to catch up.
Yeah, but look at the number, though, Jim. The number is huge. 30 billion. I mean, I'm all for technology improvements, but 30 billion?
Yeah, and other departments have made huge sacrifices. You know, tell that to the school secretary or to DEFRA or some of the hard-hit departments. You're right, the whole government has made a massive sacrifice to put a large amount of money into health. I happen to think that some of that could make a difference. But it won't if the doctors go on strike. That'll just blow everything up again.
Yeah. Well, that's right. You know, because Keir Starmer keeps banging on, and it's one of my big bugbears on this show. He keeps banging on about all the extra appointments that are being made. You know, he said that we were going to get 2 million, then it was 3 million. Now he's claiming they've got 4 million extra appointments, and everybody I talk to tells me that for every procedure that they get eventually done, they've had about 4 different appointments made. So I'm beginning to wonder whether there's just a series of sort of appointments being made, but not actually honoured.
Well, you're right that it is incredibly inefficient internally. And these stories of patients being bounced from one thing to another and they're going in and having their... Someone told me yesterday that they went in and had their height measured 4 times in the same afternoon for the same procedure. I mean, that does give you the impression that the management of the NHS is really struggling. But listen, there are some good things going on. There are some uses of technology. The app is a lot better. Lots of people do have procedures that go very smoothly. It's not all bad. But this strike, I promise you, it's going to cost a lot of lives, and it will throw all of those improvements backwards. It really will.
And is there an opportunity here, perhaps? I know the Labour government won't do it, but to look at the BMA, because I'm told, you know, quite a lot of doctors are not actually in the BMA, so they won't go on strike. And less than half of those who are in the BMA actually voted to strike.
I know. I find this a weird aspect of the whole thing. You speak to a lot of doctors and they'll say, oh, it's just the BMA, it's nothing to do with me.
Yeah.
But hold on a second, it is your union.
Right.
So where are the grown-ups in all of this? If a lot of doctors, if half of doctors don't really think the BMA is representing them, why aren't they out there voting? How did 45% of doctors not vote? I can tell you, if it was my union and they were going to do something that I didn't agree with, I would be out there voting and having my voice heard. Very difficult to hear a doctor criticise the BMA.
Yeah.
I understand that. They are a vicious organisation. They've come after me on a couple of things and it hasn't been pleasant.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that doctors who are paid a lot of money and should be grown-ups can't challenge their own union.
Yeah. And so, I mean, what is Wes Streeting going to do here? Because he can't give them any money, but he equally can't allow them to go on strike. You know, somewhere in the middle is going to have to be some resolution, right?
Well, on one level, he has my sympathy. This is a real problem because the BMA does have his hand in advice. On the other, I don't know what his plan is, and this seems to be the repeated story again and again with this government. They had a long time. They were very, very critical of the way that the Conservatives went about handling the BMA. It was not helpful for the opposition to be criticising the government month after month after month as former secretaries of health tried to wrestle with the BMA. A little bit of support from the opposition would have gone a long way. And so how did they game plan this exactly? What exactly are their moves? I haven't seen an agenda for change. I haven't seen some kind of proposition from DHSC that puts, for instance, performance and workplace changes on the table and makes a case to the public and to doctors for some kind of reform. It's all still very narrowly about pay, pay, pay. And that's no way to conduct a modern negotiation.
And they always pretend, of course, it's not about pay, it's about conditions, but we all know what it's about because otherwise they wouldn't have taken the 22% pay rise. Mick in Wallington says this, the BMA should be a prescribed organisation due to the willful damage caused to the population. I mean, I think that's just going to be the way every government now goes. Just go, let's prescribe them, make them a terrorist organisation, and then they won't be able to operate.
Yeah, I don't think that's
not quite there.
But I don't agree with you completely. Being a doctor at the moment is really tough. A lot of them have found that they're in jobs that they didn't really think that they had signed up for. A lot of the conditions are tricky because the NHS isn't well managed. It's very hierarchical. They feel that they're pushed around a lot. You can't book your wedding because if it doesn't fit in with your rota, it might get cancelled. There are these quite nasty, egregious work conditions that makes being a doctor right now really miserable. But what I don't understand is, why isn't that on the table? Why isn't Wes out there making the case for a modernisation of conditions? And that, I think, is what a lot of that's what motivates a lot of doctors. I don't think it is just pay. Of course, the BMA, that's all they bang on about because they're trying to show value for money for the fees they charge to doctors. But actually, in their hearts, what most doctors want to see is their own profession being modernised and for their fulfilment to be improved.
Yes, indeed. Lord Jim Bethell, thank you very much indeed. Former Conservative Health Minister there talking to us about the junior doctors' strike. For some reason, they decided they don't want to call themselves junior doctors anymore. Well, I'm going to continue to call them that, not least because they don't want me to. I'm just like that. It makes me a bit of a difficult individual. I can't help it. 0344 499 1000 is the number. Coming up in the next hour, Esther McVeigh going to join us, and also we'll talk about judges. This is Talk.
How much, ladies and gentlemen, are fish and chips where you come from? We'll go to Jason in Crewe.
Jason from Crewe, fish, chips and peas, £7.50. It's the best chippy in England.
Janice in Leeds, go.
Regarding fish and chips in Leeds, it's between £9.50 and £12.75.
Whitby, how much is fish and chips?
3 of us, fish, chips, peas, I think one of us curry sauce, 3 cans of pop, just short of 70 quid.
£70? That's 23 quid a head, man. Even my maths does that. Very quickly, a voice note. Campbell in Scotland, go.
Up here in Banff in the northeast of Scotland, we can get a fillet and a half of haddock with a regular chips for £8 and 10 pence, and it's by far and away one of the best chippies I've ever had.
Kenneth in Surrey, fish and chips, go.
Fish and chips in Ascot, about half a mile from where you used to live, will cost you £12.60. Great show. Keep up the good work.
That's why I moved, because you were living there. When was the last time you had fish and chips?
Couple of weeks ago.
How much? Where'd you get it from?
I think it was about 40 quid. It was in the Ivy.
Honestly, you really are. For any of you who think he's a man of the people, I nearly said you're a...
Keeping it real.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. Coming up to 3 minutes past 8. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until 10, of course. Lots to do, much to talk about. Emmanuel Macron and Keir Starmer continued their love-in today. They're going to have some kind of conversation about stopping the boats. You know what's going to happen. Keir Starmer's going to talk to him man to man. He might even touch him and put his hand on his shoulder, you know, the way he does, and just hold it there for slightly too long and make everybody feel kind of cringy and go, you know, all this irregular migration, you know, we've got to try and do something about it. Absolutely. Yeah, but will we? No. Keir Starmer will have absolutely no cards to play in the game because Emmanuel Macron has already said that we make it too easy for these migrants to come to this country. We make it too attractive. We make it absolutely and utterly wonderful for them, and that's why they leave France, where they don't make it wonderful for them, and they come here because they know that they'll get a decent wage, they'll get a decent hotel, they'll get a decent set of bits and pieces of cash, they might get a phone, they get all of the treatments that we don't get. They'll get to see a doctor, they'll get to see a dentist, they might get trampolining lessons, they might get taken to Anfield, they get shown around Liverpool Football Club, you know, any number of great perks of the job come by being an illegal migrant, not an irregular one. Let's get a voice note from Jane.
Hi, good morning, Maggie. It's Jane from Stockport. I was just chuckling because I was looking at your details, your interviews with regards to what happened yesterday with Macron, and all I could see was the placard in the top right-hand corner saying Britain's broken. And I thought, oh wow, what a placard put behind while they make all these speeches. And I realised it was just something that talkTV's put on the screen. Anyway, joking aside, when it comes to Keir Starmer and all the things we're doing at government at the moment, it's like waking up every day to an absolute nightmare and looking at your clockometer on the side with the figures of 44,359 have arrived since Starmer. I think where we're up to at the moment, everybody's moaning and complaining about the government, about a robotic Prime Minister, an economist that's not an economist, a solicitor that's not a solicitor, and a care worker that's probably going to be running the country if the robot decides that he's going to give up.
It's a very bad scene that you paint there, Jane, but thank you, you're absolutely right. It is horrendous, isn't it? Meanwhile, we've got the doctors. They're going out on strike, the junior doctors. That's going to cause a problem. Greg Wallace is saying he's going to war with the BBC because they fired him over his inappropriate conduct. He now claims that he's got a disability. That's right. And he says he's autistic, which apparently means he has to drop his trousers every 5 minutes and make lewd comments to women while touching them up. I've never heard of that disability before, but you probably get a free car for it, I would imagine. 5 minutes past 8, this is Morning Glory. Phew, blimey. Does anybody here know how to play this game? There's a question that Jimmy Breslin used to once ask in America. This one from Nick in Lowestoft. The solution to the migrant crisis is very, very simple, and I don't understand why our government haven't already done it. Identify the largest offshore island on the UK that is uninhabited, full stop, fill it with old mobile homes and create an internment camp for boat migrants. No luxuries, but they would be fed and they would be safe. Then watch the boats stop. There would be no problems with the ECHR because it's our territory. We're not processing them offshore. It does seem to make perfect sense, Nick, and certainly it's one of the things that I've suggested in the past, including also suggestions of using cruise ships which are docked off the coast of Britain in international waters so that they can't technically claim that they are making asylum in Britain. Carolyn Shuren by Sea says, morning, Mike. Surely Charles has enough years of waiting to learn how to behave correctly and do the job properly from our wonderful Queen Elizabeth. What on earth is wrong with him? Don't lose it, Mike. I know it's difficult. Have a great day. Yeah, I know. I was really quite annoyed this morning when I started the show. I've calmed down a bit now, which is just as well, because we're going to talk to Esther McVeigh, and I wouldn't want to frighten her. Former Minister for Common Sense. Esther, very good morning to you.
You've never frightened me, Mike. It's great to be here.
Good to talk to you. I'm a bit worried about the King at the moment. He made a speech last night, and I'm saying to people, I know we're all very much in favour of the royal family, and we think that, his mother, the Queen Elizabeth II, was fantastic. He doesn't seem quite to have followed in her footsteps. He used that dreadful phrase, I'm just going to play it for you here, irregular migration. I just wish he wouldn't do it. Have a look.
Our diplomats will work together to defend the international rule of law and the multilateral system. Our security services and police will go further still to protect us against the profound challenges of terrorism, organised crime, cyber attacks, and, of course, irregular migration across the English Channel.
It's just it's just the wrong word. It's not irregular. It's regular for a start. It's illegal migration, and I worry when I hear people like him saying that.
You have to be worried because language is important. The word is illegal, not irregular. Swapping one word for another is plain wrong. And what you're doing here is reframing how the public should perceive illegal migration. So what that says is reducing the severity of the word, reducing the urgency of the word. It is reframing the truth. And I'm afraid when you've got a failing government, rather than tackling the issue, they want to reduce, as I said, the criminality of what is going on. So I say we all keep to the word illegal, and then we say to Starmer, look, this is a national emergency. We need to come out of the ECHR immediately, as we've said. We need to come out of the Human Rights Act, stop that, as we have said, and bring back a deterrent, which is Rwanda.
Yeah. Because even Emmanuel Macron is busy telling us that we're too nice to them, basically. And he's more or less saying there's nothing France can do to stop them coming, because at the end of the day, they're coming because they rather enjoy what happens when they get here.
Oh, look, Macron has completely out outmanoeuvred Starmer, hasn't he? I mean, he's got all this pomp and ceremony, he's got a state visit, and what has he come here to do? He's come here not to help. We've already changed the wording for him to irregular, and what he's done is been the voice of the EU, told us what we're doing wrong, and we've got to stop the pull factors. Now, I will agree we have to stop the pull factors, but I don't believe that Starmer really has got the stomach to do that. You've got to stop the housing, stop the benefits, stop the illegal work so they're not paying taxes. Yes, you've got to do that. But at the same time, he has to say, what else can we do? And that one in, one out is another big con, Mike.
It's a ridiculous idea, isn't it? I mean, one thing is for sure, even if it was one in, one out, which it won't be, because you'd end up getting, you know, one out, one in with a big family who comes with about 10 people. But even if it was one for one, it doesn't reduce the number, does it? I mean, he's working with Rachel Reeves' calculator here.
Exactly. So what we're saying is you get an illegal immigrant in, and then what they're saying is they'll take it back. You've got to take somebody over who has got a family connection. And then I think France, in a way, has played a blinder. So what they're doing is getting as many people out of their country as possible. So some will come over to England, and anybody who goes back to France, who maybe stopped somewhere else, which they will have on the journey to France, he's going to push them back to other EU countries. Hence, you've got 5 EU countries now coming out saying, we don't agree with this at all. And to be fair, Macron is only looking out for his legacy. His tenure will come to an end, it's at 2027, and he needs to say to the people of France, I wasn't this huge failure, as they see him at the moment, deeply unpopular. No, what I've done is I've made Britain pay the price, and I've stood up for our rights to the rest of the EU, and Starmer needs to wake up to that fact that he's being played like a fiddle.
But the trouble is he seems blind to it, doesn't he? Because he's so enamoured by this whole kind of, you know, international statesman role that he likes to play so often, right? Apparently there's going to be a phone call made to the coalition of the willing. Well, they won't need to put many people on it, will they? Because there's only about 2 other countries that are actually joined up.
Everybody now sees him as a weak leader. That is why Macron's taking this opportunity to do something, as he sees, for France. Starmer's MPs know he's weak, therefore they can force him to do U-turn after U-turn. As I said, Macron sees him as weak, and the latest is the junior doctors see him as being weak. They took a massive pay rise, no conditions of change whatsoever, and they are back because they will force his hand and they will get what they want from him. He is a disaster of a leader. He doesn't have a vision, doesn't know where he's going, and he hasn't got the strength to see it through.
Yeah, and now we learned this morning that 67% of people in the country actually disapprove of the government, which is the lowest approval rating or highest disapproval rating, I think, of any government in the history of government.
I'm surprised the approval rating's that high. I think it's actually worse. I think Labour's toast. Starmer is definitely toast, and actually everybody I speak to hasn't got a good word for them. So anybody there who's got any good things to say about them, I'd like to meet them, unless that is just the illegal immigrants and people on benefits who've got a good word to say for him.
Yeah, absolutely right. And I mean, we got all sorts of other weird things going on. I mean, House of Commons yesterday, they started talking about football, and they passed this new Football Regulator Act, which is going to mean that fewer football matches are going to be on television for free. And, you know, why are they sticking their noses into all that all of a sudden?
Yeah, because they can't deal with the difficult things. So what you do, you start meddling and interfering in things which basically are irrelevant and none of your business. If anything, you'll probably make it worse. So this was Labour pushing legislation through, pretending they could do something. Because remember, the flagship legislation actually was the welfare reforms. Well, that has collapsed. So we're doing this nonsense instead. Look, Starmer, the public isn't fooled. They want you to do the key things, and that is reducing the cost of welfare, doing it properly, stopping illegal immigrants coming into this country and sapping us of all of our money. And instead, what Starmer's government is going to do. It's going to take away benefits from legitimate people. They're going to take pensions away from pensioners who paid money and all the like, because basically he's too weak to sort out the immigration problem.
Yeah, exactly right. And I don't think I've even spoken to you. I think it was this time last week we spoke, so I haven't spoken to you since the debacle of Rachel Reeves and the tears before tea time in the House of Commons last week. What did you make of all that as a woman in politics?
Well, she was very upset before, and I would say about 15 minutes before, and the reason I know that, we did a deferred division. Right. That means you do an earlier division, and I was doing that, and I saw her outside behind the Speaker's chair, nothing to do with the Speaker, behind the Speaker's chair, and she seemed to me deeply upset and in tears. Now, the reality is, Mike, and I know they've said it could be personal reasons, and we'll never know really what the reality is, but if you are that upset, you should never have gone into the House and sat on the front bench, because we're all presuming she just heard the latest figures for the UK, debt figures, growth figures, job figures, unemployment figures, and then obviously what did we see? We saw a gilt yield spike, the pound plunge. Those tears probably cost us all £3 billion, so we're all in tears for her. So she should never have gone in. So if that was the state she was in, she should never have sat in the front bench. And by the way, you don't need to sit on the front bench. Lots of other people would want to sit on the front bench who are all in cabinet. I've been there and everybody scrambles to get on that front bench. And as for Starmer saying he didn't know, he was so focused, can I tell you that is absolute nonsense. Having stood at the dispatch box, having done questions, you are in a state of heightened awareness. You know exactly what's going on. You sit down, you see your colleagues at either side, and prior to that, the MP just behind her had already leant forward before PMQ started and said, "Are you okay?" To which she sort of brushed it off and said, "Fine." So this is a nonsense. I think her job might well have been, she might well have been losing her job because of what happened on the welfare vote the day before. Maybe she thought sitting on the front bench showed her steeliness, grit and determination. It did the exact opposite.
Yeah, it really did. And finally, you posted a lovely picture of yourself and Norman Tebbit yesterday on your Twitter, looking like quite a long time ago, it has to be said. But both of you looking great. Your political hero, it says. Farewell, Norman. He died sadly yesterday at the age of 94. What was your memory of him?
Well, can I tell you, this man embodied social mobility. People said he was more Thatcherite than Thatcher. Right. You know, born sort of 1930s, would have been a deeply difficult time for the world. His dad didn't have a job, and he said that spurred him on. He didn't go to crime, illegality. No, what it did, it spurred him on. And then he didn't go to university. He got into the RAF. He became a pilot, and I joke and I say, oh, he's the only man I know who could do 3D trigonometry in his head. My God, the man was a genius, which we saw. And he didn't do focus or polling groups for Margaret Thatcher. He said he didn't need to because they knew where they were going and they were instinctively in tune with the public. So they got on with the big issues in hand. Something now Starmer couldn't do, doesn't do, and just hasn't got that common touch. He doesn't know where he's going. And then the other thing I would say, he had humour to the end. He always had a quip and an answer, and you saw when he was brought out there from the Brighton bomb, and he'd been under that rubble for some time, and he was in a bad state. And the emergency services said to them, obviously, before maybe they were going to give him an injection or penicillin or whatever, they said, "Are you allergic to anything?" And he said, "Yes, bombs."
Yeah.
So, you know, in the state he was in, he had a quip for everything. And I say, one of the few people who I think was one of the best communicators ever. He could say things in a couple of words. He would probably seize the headline. So when he said to people, get on your bike, find a job, what he was saying is there are alternatives. Pull yourself up from your bootstraps. We give support where we can. But you know what? This is a great country. Go out and do the best for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. A great man. Good to talk to you, Esther. Thank you very much indeed. Esther McVeigh, former Minister for Common Sense there. Good morning, Mike. To use a football analogy, says Jules in Camden, Starmer lost the dressing room not long after he became Prime Minister, and King Charles is on the cusp of doing the same. The King's recent comments, says Bill in Cheshire, he's obviously listening to Starmer too much. He's scoring own goals every time he speaks. He's completely out of touch with the reality of people's lives. We're now beginning to see why our beloved Queen Elizabeth II was so reluctant to hand over to him earlier. Too many years of talking to plants, perhaps. Yeah, I mean, this is the trouble. A lot of people being very critical of the King this morning. One from Roy in Gloucester. Mike, I feel your frustration on the migrant situation. Even Macron acknowledges we are the dumping ground of Europe. How much longer can this carry on? Regarding Labour's popularity, when I speak to friends and mates, even people who normally have no interest in politics, absolutely detest Starmer and this government. That's from Roy in Gloucester. That's fascinating, isn't it? People who don't even normally care about politics are getting so cheesed off with this man and his policies and his government that they are literally turning on him. Let's get a voice note from Stephen.
Just on the situation of the English football bill, FIFA and UEFA have strict regulations which ban governments from interfering with their respective football associations and governing bodies. So this will mean that UEFA and FIFA will take action against England, which could possibly see Premier League clubs banned from playing in all European Cup competitions such as Champions League, etc. And also England and possibly Wales losing the right to stage the co-host of European Championships in 3 years' time, and any other bids to compete in the World Cup or European competition. So Labour have made a complete screw up with this legislation, and they're going to be killing English domestic football for the foreseeable future. And
Stephen, yeah, I take your point. I don't understand why they're doing it. I don't get what the point of it all is. And as ever, you might expect that they're screwing it up. Of course they are, because that's anything they know how to do. You know, what are you doing over here, Sir Keir Starmer? Oh, I'm just messing around with some immigration numbers. Are you? Right. What are you going to do? Oh, we're going to call them irregular migrants, and that way we're going to get rid of the problem. This from Steve sent me this on Twitter. It's an obvious attempt by Starmer and his lousy government to skew the immigration figures, call them irregular, and hey presto, the illegal figures disappear and drop off. Yeah, maybe that's what they're doing. But let's not let them get away with it, OK? We're not calling them irregular. We're certainly not calling them regular. We're calling them illegal, because that's what they are. The stitch up is on the way. 8:21.
Organised crime runs the dealing of the drugs in the prisons, just like it runs the dealing of the drugs on the other side of the prison wall. In certain prison, Islamist gangs rule the roost, force people into conversion, and there is, of course, an air of menace, and the threat of violence is prominent in far too many
and
jails.
That's why nobody wants to work in it. I mean, I actually have total sympathy on many occasions for staff that work in prisons.
the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's 8 to 24. We're here till 10 o'clock, of course. 0344 499 1000 is the number. Darren says, this morning, Mike, I can't watch you this morning as I'm off to do some irregular housebreaking, carjacking, and, if I have some time, some irregular shoplifting. Have a great day. Yeah, irregular. What a stupid word. You know, it's very clear what irregular means. In fact, I might even look up the actual definition of it to just get it for you so that we can tell the King exactly which words he should be using and which words he shouldn't. Oh, excuse me. We'll talk to Luke Gittos in a moment as well, who's a partner at Murray Human, about some weirdness going on in the Law Society because they've come up with a plan to give free training courses for aspiring judges, which is all fine and dandy, isn't it? Because why not? Why not be giving people the freedom to try and explore their judicial side and become possibly judges in the future? But unfortunately, it's only free for certain people, black, Asian and ethnic minority solicitors. Wouldn't you know? Let's get a voice note from Mark.
Morning, Mike. It's Mark in Lancashire. Well, there's so much about these boats coming across the channel that just doesn't make sense, isn't there? Why do the French not stop them? Why do they not stop them at the other side when they're inflating the dinghies? Why do they not stop them in their waters? Why are our border force bringing them over here? What's happening to all these dinghies when they get here? Seems like they're being sent back. We don't have warehouses or photographs of all piles of dinghies and outboard motors and life jackets. They're all being sent back. Now, it doesn't make sense to the extent that I've come to the conclusion that this must be an organised thing where the EU and the French and the British government have actually agreed that Britain is going to take our fair share, what they see as our fair share, of these illegal migrants into Europe, and that the government is going to take them. Now, that's the only explanation I can come up with, that they've sorted it out between themselves. We're out of the EU, so they can't do anything officially, but the governments have come up with this.
Yeah, you could well be right. It doesn't make much sense, Mark, does it? Absolutely bonkers. Just before we talk to Luke Gittos and talking about luggage and talking about people travelling, have a look at this. This is from last night. Emmanuel Macron's motorcade, convoy, whatever you want to call it, pitches up here in London. They drive off after an event, doors open, back open, the luggage falls out the back. Unbelievable. This is supposed to be highly secure, detail of people who know what they're doing. They're dropping bags out the back of the van. Sacre bleu. What's going on with the French? You know, no wonder they can't secure their borders. They can't even secure the car. For heaven's sake. Luke Gittos is here, partner at Murray Human. Luke, a very good morning to you.
Bonjour.
Good to see you. Thank you. A surprise, I suppose, or possibly not, from the Law Society this morning. This is an exclusive that we discovered yesterday. Somebody tipped us off. Official figures released last week show that 19% of solicitors, 17% of barristers, 12% of judges are from minority backgrounds. Only 1% of judges are black. So they've decided to run free training courses for aspiring judges, but not open to white people.
Yeah, I'm going to do my best to ruin your exclusive, I'm afraid.
Go on.
Right. I don't think this is a big problem. I've looked up what this is. This is what they call a becoming a judge course, right? That are run by the Law Society. They run these periodically for people who would not normally apply to become judges, and that includes and has included in the past people from state schooling. And this particular set of workshops, you're right, is targeted and exclusively open to those from black or ethnic minority backgrounds. We've got to remember that the Law Society is not publicly funded. It's a representative body for solicitors. It's funded by our practice fees. And, you know, if there is massive outcry about this within the profession, then we do have the power to make a change. It's a representative body. So it is different to if this was being run by, say, the Ministry of Justice, where you might raise some.
Well, they're probably doing it as well, I would imagine.
I think what's really important is that we stay focused on the real problems within the justice system. We have seen, for example, the two-tier sentencing guideline earlier this year, which would have genuinely introduced differential treatment during sentencing for people from different backgrounds. Luckily, that was gotten rid of.
Because it was thought to be prejudicial. It was thought to be racially discriminatory, which surely this is, isn't it?
Well, so what this is trying to do, and why this does have echoes of that two-tier sentencing guideline, is that they're trying to correct an apparent disparity, because black and ethnic minority people are still less represented in the judiciary than white people.
Yeah, but they're not less represented in the judiciary if you look at the population as a whole, are they? You know, it's not a 50-50 scenario. 50% of the population are not from ethnic minorities. Therefore, why should they be 50% represented as judges?
I don't think they're going for 50%, but they are going for higher than...
Yeah, but you see what I'm saying?
I do, yeah. And I think
because the proportions of ethnic minority appearance in what is 19% of solicitors, 17% of barristers, that's actually higher than their representation in society, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
So why do you need to increase it?
Well, because there is a particular interest, I think, at least from the perspective of the Law Society, that those who sit in our courtrooms are reflective of the people that they will be adjudicating.
Yeah, well, they are, though. Or are you saying that there are a higher proportion of black and ethnic minority criminals?
Well, that might well be the case. It's true that young black, people are more likely to be involved in our justice system than other constituencies. But the key point here is that our judiciary has to be representative. Now, they're not going for an exact...
Yeah, but I'm saying it is, though. And you're saying it is, in a way. I mean, it's a confused picture then, isn't it? Because
the facts are that the black and ethnic minority lawyers struggle to make their way to the upper echelons of the bar and into the judiciary.
And why do you think that is?
The Law Society is trying to correct that. The Law Society is trying to... is providing a free workshop that's paid for by its members, and that if the members have a problem with it, they can always come back and complain about it. And there is an interest in making sure that our judiciary reflects our society as best as we can. Now, of course, this is going to be, it's imperfect, and of course, these interventions can sometimes seem quite clumsy. But when it comes to the Law Society running free workshops, I don't think we have an enormous problem.
No, I don't think it's an enormous problem, but I think if you tried to run a workshop that was running free training courses for white people, there would be a massive outcry, wouldn't there?
Yeah, well, but because the implication of that would be totally different, because the judiciary is already broadly broadly made up of people who are white and from public schools.
Yeah, but what difference does it make who prosecutes in a court of law as to what colour they are, and what difference does it make what colour a judge is? I mean, are you saying that a black judge needs to be judging cases involving black people?
No, I'm not saying that.
Well, is that what the Law Society is trying to achieve?
No, what I'm saying is that, like it or not, there is a perception in society that the judicial system is skewed against those from ethnic minority backgrounds. And what the Law Society is trying to do by recruiting and ensuring that more ethnic minority people make it through the ranks of the justice system is to try and correct that impression, even though it might not exist in substance. And
so they're actually doing something that doesn't make any sense then?
No, we have an important principle in this country, which is justice is not only done, but is also seen to be done.
Yes, but it's also supposed to be colourblind, isn't it?
It is, and it should be.
Well, it's not colourblind if you're promoting black people and ethnic minority candidates to deliberately make a sort of a false upscaling of certain minorities because you think you're not doing it right.
That's not what's happening with these workshops, and I would agree with you. If someone was being promoted to the judiciary just for being from an ethnic minority, then that would be a serious problem.
So what's the reason, would you say, that people are not becoming judges if they're coming from different backgrounds? Why are they failing to become judges?
Well, probably because they feel that, firstly, there's not that network of people like them within the judiciary. They feel as though it's an exclusionary atmosphere, one run, that's effectively still an old boys' club. That's the impression that exists, and that's what...
Well, I imagine there's probably not very many white working-class kids that make it into the judiciary as judges either. Are you going to do a course for them?
Well, they have. That's what I said earlier, which is that they have run these courses for people from state schools, and I've little doubt that they would love more applications from people from working-class backgrounds. But there is a deep there's always a problem when professions like lawyers try in their clumsy way to correct social inequalities that lead to the kind of disparities that we see within our profession. Our profession is made up of mostly people who haven't had to struggle to survive or haven't had to, have struggled to pay their bills day by day because it's expensive to become a lawyer. It's a luxury to become a lawyer.
So once you're a lawyer, you're already part of the elite anyway, aren't you? So you've already done pretty well for yourself.
That's definitely true. And, these workshops are trying to make sure that as best we can, we don't create an artificially exclusionary environment within the judiciary where people feel as though they can't make it because of the colour of their skin or their background.
Yeah. But they've already, in a way, they've already made it, though, because they're already lawyers, aren't they? I mean, if you're a barrister in this country, I don't think you're going to walk around going, I've been discriminated against because I'm white, black, or whatever.
No, but lawyers go into a courtroom every day. They see the person sitting in front of them adjudicating over their case. And I think it would be a problem if every single judge who sat in our Crown Courts was white and from public school. That would create an artificial...
But they're not, are they?
...of what our society's like. No, it's not. But it's also important.
So it's fine then.
People who want to become... You might argue that the Law Society is trying to create a problem that doesn't exist, right? That might be
I think
right.
they're trying to correct a problem that doesn't exist.
Well, that might... You might be right on the statistics, but for whatever reason, there is an impression amongst lawyers that the judiciary is a closed shop and that it needs more people from different backgrounds. Now, they might be wrong about that, but you seem to be making a different argument, which is actually this is wrong in principle.
Yeah, because I think tokenism and sort of projects which try to make quotas necessary in any job, I think is the wrong way to go. I just don't think it's fair.
Tokenism would be wrong, but what if it was the case that really good people were not applying to become judges because they thought it was only for white people from public school?
I don't think anybody thinks that.
Well, we don't know, do we? But that's
I'm pretty sure that most barristers are quite intelligent people, right? Most barristers are quite intelligent people. I would imagine they've got quite far because they are quite intelligent and because they're quite ambitious and because they're quite well educated. And I don't think they need to be told, here's how you become a judge because you previously didn't think you could.
Well, the fact is that people need to feel as though there is a network of support there if they want to move into a new position within their profession. That's what these workshops are.
What about white people who might feel like they're not? What about white people who might feel that they're not ready or they're somehow not qualified to be judges? They're not getting any help, are they?
Well, they do. The programs exist for people who...
So you've got a white-only program as well, have you?
Yeah, I've said that maybe 3 times now, that there is a program.
You said there was a state school program. You didn't say it was white-only.
No, it's not white-only.
So it isn't then? You haven't got a white-only. So you haven't got a white-only course then?
No, there is a state school course.
Well, that's not a white-only course, is it?
White and who are... No, it's not a... I've already said 3 or 4 times it's not a white-only course because white people are the majority within the population. And if you sought to exclude people merely because of their race, that would be racist.
Yeah. But I have to say, Luke, I don't wish to be unkind to you, but you're not making a very good case here at all. If I were the judge, I would say, case dismissed, go and try again, a bit harder.
Well, you wouldn't be the only judge who has said that, so don't worry about that, Mark. What I think we've identified is that, look, these are free workshops run by a privately funded organisation to try and correct an impression that exists amongst barristers and solicitors that they can't enter the upper echelons of the judiciary if they're black or Asian. I don't think that's a huge problem, and I think it is important to recognise when we do have real problems within the justice system and when we don't.
Yeah, well, I think it's tinkering around the edges when there are probably, as you say, far more important things to worry about. But thank you. Luke Gitto's there, partner at Murray Human, not making a very good case for why we need to have more black, Asian and ethnic minority solicitors becoming judges. I don't really understand what that is all about. Surely it's prejudicial, isn't it, to the case, my lud? Let's get a voice note from Ian.
Ian from Hemel Hempstead. If you're a chess player, you'd realise that the Queen is a far more powerful player than the King. She can do lots more, and that's exactly what's happened here. We've now got a King who just doesn't know what he's talking about. Job description: put on a furry hat, smile a lot, talk to people, sit in a big metal throne once in a while, keep your mouth shut. Abject fail.
Yeah, very good point, Ian. Mike says, Liza in Dorset, sadly the King is right, we don't have a border with France as it's wide open. Also remember, his speeches are written by this Labour government who are anti-monarchists. Starmer will do anything to try and turn us royalists against the King as he wants to abolish the monarchy. So Charles is actually going along with a bloke who's a Republican who wants to do away with the monarchy, and he's reading out the things that he's been put in front of him. That's ridiculous. Gillian from Warwickshire says, morning, Mike. On immigration, Macron will negotiate the best deal for France and Starmer will negotiate the best deal for France. Another 4 years of this, God help us. Great show as always. And Graham in Allsworth says, it's very much in France's interest to stop the boats from crossing the Channel. If they can't come to this country, then they will stop going to France to get to this country. Sorry, I'm not sure I follow your logic there. Anyway, never mind. It's 8:39.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. That went on a bit longer than I thought, as I'm now in trouble with the timings of everything. Harry Cole's coming up, and of course Robert Jenrick in the next hour as well. We'll get his view on what is going on between the King, the King, the Prime Minister, and of course the President of France, Emmanuel Macron. Let's now talk to Julian Jessup, because the OBR have sounded the alarm very firmly about what they're calling a vulnerable British economy. And not only that, but in the Sun today, they've picked out something in the sort of hidden depths of the OBR report, in which it says the dash to net zero will cost an economy sapping £800 billion by 2050. Absolutely extraordinary stuff. Julian, very good morning to you.
Good morning.
So, it's worse than we thought then, apparently.
Well, to be fair to the OBR, they've been making these warnings for many years now. So it's not just under the current government, but under previous governments that government debt appears to be on an unsustainable path. The problem is that successive governments haven't listened. They've not been willing to make the difficult decisions necessary to bring debt back under control. And I'm afraid I think we partly need to blame the electorate as well. Politicians have been dishonest with us, but we've been far too willing to believe them and think that things can continue as they are now.
Well, I mean, I'm not sure about whether it's our fault. I mean, certainly Rachel Reeves weeping last night in the last week in the House of Commons could be absolutely, drenched by the time she turns up this afternoon because of the new figures. Surely the point is that the Labour government told us that they were making the hard decisions. They told us they were making the hard decisions at the beginning of their sort of parliamentary life because they knew that they could make easier decisions later on. But they've now sort of reversed almost all of them, and all of the plans that they put in place actually haven't resulted in getting the debt down. And in fact, if anything, they've got the debt up again.
Well, you're right. I mean, things actually have got worse under the Labour government. So we've got borrowing costs in the UK that are the highest of any comparable country. And that partly reflects a lack of fiscal credibility. And you've also had the backtracking on some of the relatively small things the government was planning to do on welfare spending in particular. So I think there's no doubt that Labour has made things worse. But I think it's worth stressing the problem was pretty bad to begin with. So over the last few years, the Office of Budget Responsibility has consistently been forecasting that debt, which is currently about 100% of national income, could rise to as high as 270% of national income within 50 years. And an only slightly more pessimistic forecast for growth in productivity in the economy, we could be hitting 647% of GDP. And these absolutely massive numbers that are unsustainable. We'd basically be spending all of our national income just servicing the debt. Right. And that's going to be unsustainable.
And does there, when you say unsustainable, does there come a time when somebody says and turns around, like your bank manager might in the olden days, and go, actually, we can't lend you any more money because you're so overstretched that we don't think you can ever pay us back?
Well, it's difficult to pick a particular point at which the whole system breaks down, but we're already starting to see strains. As I say, our borrowing costs in the UK are now relatively high. And as the OBR said, we only need sort of one more big shock, whatever it might be. It doesn't have to be as big as another COVID or another energy crisis. And then the numbers completely spiral out of control. So we can't pick the exact timing of the upcoming debt crisis, but there's almost certainly one coming, possibly within years rather than decades.
Yeah, that is the big problem, isn't it? So, I mean, what can they do then? Because, I mean, we keep hearing these words, you know, the dreaded tax words that, you know, she'll have no choice but to put up taxes. But a lot of people say to me, Rachel Reeves has lost all credibility as a Chancellor pretty much already, hasn't she?
Well, I think there are two really big things that need to happen. One is that we need to get a smaller and more efficient state. So that's partly about cutting public spending, but it's also about doing the things that the state has to do more efficiently. So, for example, I heard on the radio this morning that, you know, some court trials are being delayed now until 2029. So the criminal justice system is in a real mess. That is something the government should be focusing its energy on. But there are lots of taboos, things we're not supposed to talk about. So, for example, you know, the future of the NHS or the future of the triple lock or on the state pension, right. Those sorts of things. We need to be willing to make those tough decisions. But the second thing that we need to do, and this is going to be the real game changer, is economic growth. If we can boost productivity and economic growth, then even if debt remains high, the burden of that debt becomes smaller because we've got more income to service that debt. So we need a relentless focus on growth. And of course, you're not going to get growth if you keep increasing taxes.
Well, exactly. And they can't actually create growth with public money because it's not real money. It's the taxpayer-funded, you know, organised, you know, investment, if you like. Also, just one quick one before we let you go, Julian. Apparently, the UK will miss the deadline today to finalise the tariff deal with the United States of America, which means that the steel tariffs will still remain in place. And while they may have got some concessions on other products like cars, there's still basically a deal that has not yet been done. Starmer claimed this was a deal that was done about 2 months ago.
Well, we're still in a better position than we would have been if we were in the European Union. So the European Union is still facing higher tariffs than we are. But
that's a bit like saying you've only had one arm cut off instead of both of them, right?
Well, exactly. The threat of a tariff war has not been lifted. So some of the worst fears about a global recession triggered by Trump tariffs are proved to be overdone. But there's no doubt that growth will be weaker than it would otherwise have been, inflation probably higher too. And that's another downside risk, of course, both to the economy but also to the public finances.
Yeah, absolutely right. Julian, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Let's have a look at Jonathan Reynolds, the fake solicitor. Here's what he said back in April.
We have agreed something that if we hadn't agreed would have cost the UK jobs, economic activity, real economic damage to some of our key industries. I mean, I don't exactly know who Kemi Badenoch thinks we should be trading with as a nation, but no, if she looks at this and if she maybe goes and talks to people, particularly who work in the automotive sectors, or if she's ever met anyone who works for steel or aluminium, they will understand and be able to tell her why this is so important.
Yeah, this bloke's working for British Steel now, right? He actually runs British Steel, and he doesn't seem to know that the tariffs actually haven't been lifted. He doesn't seem to. Maybe he should go and talk to some people who work in the steel business. He'll be hopping mad that he said in April there was a deal that was done, which hasn't yet been done, and it's now July. Let's see, April, May, June. That was 4 months ago. And the deal still hasn't been done. So don't listen to anybody who tells you that the US and the UK have done a trade deal, because they haven't. It's that simple. This is Talk.
I think generally speaking, all the deals are done well away from the state visit. That the conversations will have been going on a long time. They'll be between officials, and then it's kind of the wrap party, if you like. That you have the big celebration, the big gala, and it makes everyone look great. We know in diplomatic terms that state visits do have an impact.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's 8:51. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through, of course, until 10 o'clock. Morning, Mike. I says this message. All these people claiming to have autism and ADHD are really taking the Michael out of the people that really do have autism and ADHD. It's got to stop. Well, Greg Wallace has now joined that particular fray. He says he's suffering from a disability. He says it's now being diagnosed as autism. Mike, black and ethnic minorities are not discriminated against from becoming judges, says Paul in Fife. They choose not to become one. Why do we continue to perpetuate the myth that black and ethnic minorities are discriminated against? Well, it doesn't seem to be very easy to, very difficult to find a place where they're certainly not discriminated against. Mike Paul says this, it doesn't say where he's from. Isn't it condescending to the British people that this government's manifesto has nothing in it about football, winter fuel, disability benefits, adults or children, business taxes, etc., but their biggest pledge was on the immigration, stopping it and smashing the gangs, and have got nothing at all to do to stop this. It's absolutely ridiculous. As the English language is being changed for illegal to have the same meaning as irregular, can criminals get off charges by saying they didn't do anything illegal, but they did something irregular, says Colin. Well, that's a good point. Let's have a look at a couple of things from over the other side of the pond. Donald Trump yesterday in the White House was talking about Marco Rubio's clock.
So as president, you have the power, if I go into the State Department or Department of Commerce or Treasury, if I see anything that I like, I'm allowed to take it. Do you believe this? So I'm in Marco's, I see this gorgeous clock, grandfather clock, and there it is. I said, Marco. He didn't know about it. I had to read him the rule and regulations. I said, Marco, I love this clock. Look at it. It's beautiful. He said, what clock? I said, the clock that's in the other room is incredible, and nobody gets to see it there. Marco, I tried to talk him into it first, and it sort of worked, and then I had to use a little more. I said, I'd love to take that clock out and put it in the cabinet room. He said, no, are you serious? I said, Marco, I have the right to do it, Marco. And he said, all right, what the hell? So that's his contribution to the cabinet room. But it's, by the way, it's an incredible clock.
It's an incredible clock. It tells the time and everything. I mean, he's just a funny guy, isn't he? What's so funny about me? He is funny. Here he is, not being quite so funny about Vladimir Putin.
We get a lot of bull thrown at us by Putin, for you want to know the truth. He's very nice all the time, but it turns out to be meaningless.
Yeah, BS, I think, is the phrase you were looking for there. He's not, of course, averse to swearing, is he, Donald Trump? Have a listen.
They don't know what the they're doing. Do you understand that?
Yeah, they still don't. Emmanuel Macron and the British Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, are meeting today to discuss what to do about the small boats. Chris says this, my dad used to tell us 3 things the working man had as enjoyment. 1 was a smoke, 2 was a pint, and 3 was to watch a game of football. Now, a pint is too expensive. You have to watch what you say in the pub. They banned smoking, and now they're interfering with the football. Absolutely right. And David from Shepton Mallet says, I don't blame the French for not doing anything. They don't want these illegal migrants either. They want them moving through France to the Channel as swiftly as possible. We should stop sending them any money and use it to build a huge migrant welfare centre on an unoccupied Orkney Island and arrest every single illegal arrival and fly them there. They can stay there forever or get a free flight back home. Then broadcast video footage of the centre in winter all over the world saying this is what you get. And the boats would stop overnight. I'm sure that's true. They absolutely would. Shall we have a look at what's going on in Sun Letters in a minute? Let's get a voice note first from Sandra.
Hi, Mike. It's Sandra from Essex. Just thinking about what King Charles said about wanting no border between France and this country. Well, if we don't have borders, we don't have a kingdom. And if we don't have a kingdom, we don't need a king. So King Charles needs to be very careful what he wishes for in case it comes true.
Now, what a very good point, Sandra. Thank you very much indeed. That's true, isn't it? If he's not careful, he has a kingdom without borders, therefore he can't have a kingdom. Therefore he can't be a king. Therefore he doesn't have a job. Maybe he could go and qualify to be a judge with the Law Society. Let's have a look at what Sun Letters is saying. Today it's all about disabled children, and I totally agree, says Jenna in North London, with yesterday's Sun Leader column condemning the government's review of school care plans for disabled kids with special educational needs. Ministers looking to save money should be looking at areas of shameful waste or incompetence, not trying to take cash away from vulnerable children. I've worked in schools and there are not enough teaching assistants to help children who are struggling. Carol says this from Newcastle on Tyne. Surely not even Labour would impose a cost-cutting scheme on special needs children. If the government's review does slash budgets, as parents fear, it will be a despicable betrayal of these poor youngsters and their mothers and fathers. Targeting the vulnerable appears to be a Labour trait. Doesn't it just? Absolutely ridiculous. Now, coming up in the next hour, we're going to be talking to Robert Jenrick. We're going to be asking him why he thinks 67% of the public disapprove of this government. But also, we'll be asking him about what's going on in the Channel and whether there's going to be any likelihood of a deal between Emmanuel Macron and Keir Starmer that's going to be worth anything at all. Let's have a look at what he asked Justice Secretary Shabana Mahmood yesterday.
In the year since Labour took office, can the Justice Secretary tell us how many individuals have been prosecuted for smuggling people in on small boats?
So state.
Well, I don't have those figures directly to hand, but I'm sure that if they are available, I can write to him with those details.
General.
Well, I asked the Justice Secretary a very simple question about one of the biggest challenges facing our country right now, and the whole House could see that she didn't have a clue. Well, it's not just the pathetically low levels of prosecutions under her watch. It's also the fact that the Justice Secretary has waved through guidelines to shorten sentences for immigration offences. Under the Nationality and Borders Act, the most serious offence for facilitation carries a life sentence. But she is watering it down to between 10 and 16 years. Instead of smashing the gangs, she's slashing the sentences. Well, why won't she do something for once and stop this?
Yeah, it's a very good question. Of course, he wouldn't have got an answer to that. We'll be talking to Robert Jenrick, the Shadow Justice Secretary, coming up in the next hour. Mike, great show, says Kev in Shropshire. I have half my income tax to pay at the end of this month. I might pay an irregular amount. How would that end up? Yeah, well, you know how it would end up. You get fined, you get punished, you get chased by the HMRC brigade. Ian from Lancashire says, why are we fannying around with Islamophobia and illegal immigrants, Palestine action and the rest? They are a tiny minority of the people screwing us around. It's time the majority made our voices heard. We are guilty of apathy, and that includes the politicians, the media and the general public. Keep it up, Mike. Keep exposing the lies. And Sue from Macclesfield, on the subject of the Bayeux Tapestry, says, we've paid Macron over £771 million and all we get in return is a bit of old cloth. Yeah, unfortunately, that's, I'm afraid, true. You never know what's going to happen next on this show, do you? You just have no idea. But keep your voice notes coming. Keep letting us know what's going on. And also, we'll talk a bit more about Greg Wallace, who suddenly has decided that one of the reasons that he didn't get to keep his job at the BBC is because he's got autism, which apparently allows him or leads him to take his trousers off on regular occasions and chase women around the studio naked. I've never heard of that as a symptom of autism. Maybe you have. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's coming up to very nearly 3 minutes past 9. Welcome to the final hour of the show. There's lots going on this morning. We've got Emmanuel Macron and, of course, Keir Starmer all over the front pages because last night there was a state dinner. The Princess of Wales was there, the Prince of Wales as well. She accompanied her husband to a first state banquet since being treated for cancer. Kate wore a Givenchy dress by Sarah Burton, who made her wedding dress, and William wore the most noble order of the Garter sash. There was an awful lot of pomp and ceremony going on. You had, of course, Emmanuel Macron all done up to the nines as well as King Charles. And King Charles made all manner of statements, including some in French. But he also said, basically, that we do not have any border with France. We should not worry about the fact that, there are French people coming here or indeed illegal migrants coming here. And in fact, he didn't call them illegal migrants. He called them irregular migrants, which rather annoyed me, I have to say. And I've been banging on about it all morning. Macron, meanwhile, has said that it's Britain's fault that all of these small boats are coming over here because we're far too good to them and we treat them far too well. And if we treated them a bit worse, maybe, just maybe, they wouldn't come. Well, we're going to be asking Robert Jenrick about that. He's the Shadow Justice Secretary. He's going to be here very shortly. Meanwhile, on the front page of The Sun, Greg Wallace has been sacked. He says it's war now with the BBC. He's on a war footing, wouldn't you know? A bit like Keir Starmer is with Russia. He says that he had at times admittedly used inappropriate language, but he says now he's the victim of an incredible injustice. Well, let's face it, it's not an incredible injustice, really, is it? But he's also claiming that he's autistic now, and he says that he suffers from a disability. My neuro neurodiversity was suspected and discussed by colleagues across countless seasons of MasterChef, but yet nothing was done, apparently, to investigate his disability or protect him from what he now realises was a dangerous environment. What does he mean by that? I mean, he seems to spend most of his time running around naked with a sock over a certain part of his anatomy. And if that's what you do when you're autistic, then, I mean, I guess that's just another one of those symptoms that you have to deal with over time. I'm sure you can get medication for it. 0344 499 1000. Meanwhile, the doctors are going on strike again, and net zero is going to cost us £800 billion by 2050. That's an official figure that comes from the Office for Budget Responsibility, who also say we've got a very vulnerable economy and it could all go very, very wrong very, very soon. Finally, just want to cheer you up, Coldplay are officially boring. That's from a study that's been done by some professors in a university. I kid you not. They've actually, poor things, had to listen to every single Coldplay album and work out that one is as boring as another. They started off being okay, and they just got worse and worse and worse and worse. So if I were you, I wouldn't bother. 0344 499 1000, 5 minutes past 9. Let's get it on. Now, Stephen in Belfast says, come on, Mike, pull your finger out. Where's today's voice note from Judith from West Yorkshire? Well, I know she's getting quite a fan club, is Judith, because she's so sensible. I don't know, Judith, have you made us a voice note yet? If not, there's still time. It's only 6 minutes past 9. Let's cross live to Westminster, because Robert Jenrick is here, the Shadow Justice Secretary. Robert, very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Good to see you. Lovely day out there today. What is going on with this state dinner and this summit meeting between Emmanuel Macron and Keir Starmer? I can't believe they're going to actually solve anything at all, and they're certainly not going to stop any of the boats. I mean, even Macron is saying the reason the small boats and the asylum seekers keep coming here is because we're too nice to them.
Well, look, I want us to be good friends and allies with France, but it doesn't feel like that right now. The French could stop the small boats tomorrow if they wanted to. If they got their gendarmes, their police officers onto the beaches, into the shallow waters, arresting the illegal migrants, taking on the people smuggling gangs, but they're not doing that. And we've frankly given them 800 million quid in recent years for very little in return. We'll have to wait and see what the details are, if any, of the deal that Starmer and Macron are talking about. We've been led up the garden path by France many times in the recent past. The most important thing is don't rely on the kindness of strangers to fix your own borders. We need our own sovereign deterrent. That's why I've always argued for Rwanda or a scheme like that, so that if you come here illegally, you are detained immediately and you're deported in hours and days, not weeks and months. That is the answer to this problem. We know how to do this. I've been arguing for it for a long time. Starmer seems to have had a Damascene conversion now that you need some form of deterrent, but what he's proposing may not be the answer to it.
No, I don't think so. And we've given them, as you say, an awful lot of money, and I mean, nobody seems to be asking us the basic question, what have we got for that? What have we got for it?
Well, very little, clearly, because the numbers coming across the small boats have risen. They've risen by 55% this year. 100,000 undocumented people have broken into our country in recent years through small boats, and hundreds of people have drowned as well. So, you know, Macron, if he really cared about this issue, could have fixed it a very long time ago. He's chosen not to do that. That is something that I think is frankly unforgivable. But now we are where we are. We've got to get on as a country and create our own sovereign deterrent, not rely on our neighbours to fix this problem for us.
No, exactly right. And I'm just going to play you a little clip of King Charles from last night making his speech, some of which he made in French, but some of which he made in English. I'm going to ask you, what's the word that he should not have said?
Our diplomats will work together to defend the international rule of law and the multilateral system. Our security services and police will go further still to protect us against the profound challenges of terrorism, organised crime, cyber attacks, and, of course, irregular migration across the English Channel.
He said that word irregular, Robert. I wish people wouldn't use that. Macron used it as well. Why do they keep pretending it's not illegal?
Well, look, it drives me mad. That is what all of these international courts and organisations like to say. It's what Starmer says, because they cannot bring themselves to say that it is illegal to break into another country. If you or I did it, of course we'd expect to be arrested if we broke into the United States or another country. It's obviously against the law. It's been against the law in our country for a very long time, my whole lifetime. We should just have the honesty to say it. And in fact, I changed the law when I was immigration minister to say that if you do enter our country illegally, for example, on a small boat, you should never, ever have the right to claim asylum. Starmer has repealed that, or is in the process of doing that with his borders bill. Completely wrong. We need to send a very clear message to people thinking of doing this. You will never have a right to live in our country.
And yet the country is becoming more and more crowded with more and more people. I mean, with every week that passes, you know, hundreds more come. We now learn that people who have been here on work visas and on student visas, something I've suspected for a very long time, are overstaying once those visas run out. Many of them are being given hotels to stay in. Many of them are seeking asylum. Many of them are just living here without anybody really knowing what they're doing. We also know about all the illegals who are coming here and working as food delivery drivers. You know, the whole system is just ridiculously out of control, isn't it?
Yeah, look, the system of illegal and legal migration is completely out of control and completely out of sorts with the wishes of the British public. On legal migration, we can fix this. Having left the EU, we have control of the levers of migration. We've ended freedom of movement. What we've got to do is implement a legally binding cap set by Parliament, make it the law of the land, and let's set that cap as low as possible, tens of thousands or lower, to give the country breathing space now after this period of mass migration that's put so much pressure on housing, on GP appointments. It's undercut the wages of British workers, and it's made us a less united country because you simply cannot integrate millions of people into our country in such a short period of time. We can be better than this. We can get this problem under control, and we can then move on to try to successfully integrate the people who are here and to ensure that we bring wages and living standards up for British workers once more.
Yeah. I mean, you asked a question to the Justice Secretary yesterday. We can play that clip out once again, and I'm going to ask you about it when it's finished.
In the year since Labour took office, can the Justice Secretary tell us how many individuals have been prosecuted for smuggling people in on small boats?
So state.
Well, I don't have those figures directly to hand, but I'm sure that if they are available, I can write to him with those details.
General.
Well, I asked the Justice Secretary a very simple question about one of the biggest challenges facing our country right now, and the whole House could see that she didn't have a clue. Well, it's not just the pathetically low levels of prosecutions under her watch, it's also the fact that the Justice Secretary has waved through guidelines to shorten sentences for immigration offences. Under the Nationality and Borders Act, the most serious offence for facilitation carries a life sentence, but she is watering it down to between 10 and 16 years. Instead of smashing the gangs, she's slashing the sentences. Well, why won't she do something for once and stop this?
I take it you didn't get much satisfaction there yesterday.
No, look, I was amazed. You've got the Justice Secretary of our country, one of the biggest challenges we face right now, which is the small boats crisis. You've got President Macron here having these talks, these crisis talks with our Prime Minister, and yet here she couldn't even say whether anyone under her watch had been prosecuted for facilitation, for helping smuggle people into our country. And I bet the numbers, when we do get hold of them, when we, by hook or by crook, get her to publish them, will be pathetically low. Starmer said he was going to smash the gangs. That is obviously not happening. The numbers are shooting up, 55% increase this year. Goodness knows what's going to happen this month and next, which is historically the worst month for small boat arrivals. And each and every one of these people who are breaking into our country are undocumented, people we know nothing about, who can be an immense cost to the taxpayer. And I'm afraid, as I have revealed time and again with the data that we're trying to get out of government, some of them are going to pose a very serious threat to this country, to people in our country, whether it's through the rise in crime, particularly sexual crime, that we're seeing linked to migration, or even terrorism, where you've now got Iran smuggling people in to our country to pose a serious threat. This is a national security emergency, and the government have no grip on it whatsoever.
No, they really don't. And just one final thing, Robert. I don't know whether you saw it yesterday. Just Stop Oil tweeted out a special message to you, and it was a picture of a video of one of their members forcing his way through one of the barriers on the tube. Obviously, you played quite a big role in drawing attention to the fact that so many people are doing this, that it's costing TfL, the Transport for London people, an awful lot of money. They've also attached a swear word to it, an FU, more or less, to Robert Jenrick. It says, a train from Manchester to King's Cross will set you back £150, and a corrupt Tory MP is more worried about people skipping a £4 tube fare. Public transport stops pollution, it should be free. I thought they'd given up Just Stop Oil. I thought they'd all gone on to the Free Palestine lot, but here they still are. What's the point of them?
It's just the most ludicrous thing. So here you've got an organisation that supposedly is campaigning to save the planet, saying that people should fare dodge on public transport, so there's less money for the tube, for buses, for trams, for trains, you name it. They just consistently do ludicrous stunts that turn people off and harm the very arguments they're supposedly making. I think it's really important that we bear down on petty law breaking, people not paying on public transport, and all these so-called minor crimes like mobile phone theft, like tradesmen's vans being broken into and their tools nicked, like shoplifting, that are having a really serious impact on people's lives and livelihoods, and are degrading the public realm in our country so that people don't feel safe out walking the streets of our country. That is what I'm going to keep fighting on.
Yeah, I think you should, and you certainly have our support. Robert Jenrick, thank you very much indeed, Shadow Justice Secretary there, reporting into us from Westminster. That moron still standing behind him. I don't know why he doesn't just disappear and perhaps get a small boat himself over to France. Mike, says Tracy, your lawyer guest says they are wanting to change a feeling that there aren't enough ethnic minority judges. There was me thinking the law worked on evidence, not feelings. No wonder our justice system is in a mess. Very good point, said Tracy in Staffordshire. And David, South Gloucestershire, says that bloke on the law is talking absolute rot. The judicial system is not skewed against minority groups. It is, at the moment, skewed against white working class people. Lucy Connolly is an example. He can try and waffle and gaslight all he wants. This is another example of British people being pushed down and minority groups being advantaged. It does seem a bit like that, doesn't it? Paula from Salford, thanks again for calling out yet again two-tier treatment in our judicial system. Dividing people into racial categories is a recipe for disaster. The Law Society, what a bunch of twits, says Paula from Salford. Well, it's true, isn't it? 0344 499 1000 is the number. Sarah Vine is here, author and columnist at the Daily Mail. She's got a piece in the paper today about the business of Macron and Starmer. You know, the bromance, I suppose you might say, that's been going on between the two of them. He wasn't much in sort of evidence last night, Keir Starmer, but they're having a meeting today, a summit today, to discuss what to do about the small boats. And Sarah says, when it comes to small boats, Starmer is like Monty Python's Black Knight, legless, armless, and barely able to nip Monsieur Macron's ankles. I don't think he even wants to, does he? Sarah, very good morning to you.
Good morning. It is quite Python-esque, isn't it? I'm reminded of that scene. Do you remember that brilliant scene in Monty Python's The Holy Grail where he says, "I fart in your general direction"?
Yes.
And it's basically that, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. Except, you know, he seems more at home with Emmanuel Macron than anybody else that he's ever with. I mean, it seems as though he's having a sort of love affair with him.
It's sort of fanboy. I mean, I think you know, Starmer's obviously, you know, he comes from that sort of lawyerly ECHR background, doesn't he? He's desperate to be thought of positively on the sort of European international sort of stage.
Right.
And of course, you know, Macron is king, isn't he, in that respect? So, you know, he's the courtier.
He is, but he's not frightened to say what everybody knows here in this country, which is the reason people come here on the small boats from France and God knows where else they've sort of started out from, is because we're too nice to them. I mean, you know, even Macron said that.
Exactly, and I think that. You know, I grew up in Italy and I've lived a lot in France and Italy, and the way they treat migrants there is much worse. I mean, the left in this country like to paint this picture of Britain as a kind of, you know, terribly sort of, you know, racist, displaced, but it's really not. If you go and spend any time in the rest of Europe, you will understand that Britain is actually very kind to people who are, you know, who they think are refugees, and I think. that's that's a perception that we need to change. There's a reason they want to come here, because we're nice, civilized people.
Well, exactly right, and they also get a lot of free stuff, which is
well,
always
that's
a bit
the other
of a
thing.
chore.
I mean, one of the supposed benefits of Brexit was supposed to be that coming out of the EU, we could control our own welfare levels, that we didn't have to, because if you're in Europe, you basically have to offer the same thing, and that's the other reason why Keir Starmer is so useless, because he can't even get through this welfare reform bill that he's trying to do, which is quite important and needs to be done. And of course, that's why they're all coming here, because they know that they're going to be looked after. They know that they're going to be sort of welcomed and given. And if you look at these boats, they're not full of women and children, are they?
They're really not. And I mean, it's only Darren Jones that sees that, isn't it? It's like he's looking through not only rose-tinted spectacles, but a sort of a kaleidoscopic telescope.
Men. They're all strapping young men in their 20s. I can't. You can't tell me that their life in France or Italy or wherever it is miserable, and that they're being tortured. They're not. They're coming here for a reason. And we all know what that reason is. And Starmer is incapable of addressing that. He can't even address it, in his own domestic sphere, let alone when it comes to illegal immigrants.
Yeah. Well, we saw it last night, and I played the clip already to Robert Jenrick there. King Charles mentioning the dreaded irregular migrants. They're not bloody irregular. I'm actually going to, I think I'm going to print out a definition of the word irregular and send it to Buckingham Palace so that Charles can actually read it, because irregular is the one thing they're not. They're bleeding regular. They come every day.
I have to say, I'm a bit worried about the level of wokeness coming out of the palace at the moment. I don't really. I mean, he could have said uncontrolled migration. That would have been fine.
What's wrong with illegal? That's what they are, isn't it?
Okay, if you wanted to soften it, you could have softened it like that. Instead of which he goes, he parrots the Labour line.
Yeah.
And I just, I don't. The king should be neutral.
Yeah.
He shouldn't be. We all know that Charles has got he's quite a soft-hearted man, and that's completely fine. But it just seemed to me that he was just being quite woke, and I don't want that from my king.
No,
Sorry.
I don't. I mean, if it was the
we were talking. Starmer is not a royalist, and you're messing your patch if you do that.
Yeah, exactly. And you're sort of playing into the hands of the people who think that there's a conspiracy by the establishment in this country to bring these people in, because you're referring to them in a way which supposedly means that they're not being treated as criminals. Exactly. They are criminals. They're coming in illegally. They don't have the right to be here. And if he'd really wanted to say a word that was actually more appropriate, he could have called them asylum seekers if he wanted to. But it's the word irregular. It really annoys me. It just really gets me.
And it's that Labour speak, isn't it?
Yeah.
Which is so irritating. Which is trying to it's that sort of trying to soften the language in order to kind of make people think differently. I mean, I think that Macron coming here, I don't understand why he's here. I don't understand why this can't just be done, over the telephone. I mean, it's clear, already they're rowing back on it. They're already managing expectations on it. The fact that that Number 10 sort of leaked it may well cause a load of asylum seekers or immigrants, whatever you want to call them, to try and come early, because there'll be this notion that the routes might be shut down. So that in itself cause problems and might cause deaths. The whole thing, as ever with Number 10 under Starmer, has been appallingly managed, and it's just so incompetent. The whole thing is just so incompetent.
Well, their whole government is incompetent. I mean, I woke up this morning to a new YouGov poll in which it says that 67% of the public in this country disapprove of the government. I mean, it's epic, isn't it?
And I think it was one of your emailers asked earlier, what have we got for that 770 million? Well, basically, the French have bought themselves a load of helicopters and quad bikes. That's what we've got for our 770 million. They've re-equipped their police force.
Yeah.
Based on the money that we've given them. I'd quite like to have some of that money back, to be honest.
Right, but also nobody seems to be asking what they've done with it. I mean, not one politician have I seen.
They've just had a big spending spree. They've gone and bought loads of boys' toys, basically. Yeah. I mean, there's a list. You can find it. It's on the internet.
Yeah.
But it's just... So the whole thing is just... And this kind of bowing and scraping to Macron as though he was some sort of, God. It's just... I don't understand the point of it. It doesn't make sense at all.
It's embarrassing. I mean, I was talking to Gavin Mortimer over in France earlier today from The Spectator, and he was saying, you know, Macron is about as unpopular as he can be in France. I mean, nobody likes him, nobody wants him. He's out of a job pretty soon anyway.
Well, same here with Starmer, right? So
Right.
you've got two very unpopular prime ministers basically swanning around in a sort of, you know, having lots of expensive wine. And how is that helping any of the people who vote, you know, any of the taxpayers or voters in either of their countries?
No, and that's the other problem that people have said to me this morning. You know, it's a bit of a bad time to be sort of showing off at state banquets and things and talking
Well, I mean,
about...
the OBR has just downgraded the economy and just said that we could just fall off a cliff at any moment. And there you are, you know, pouncing around at a state banquet. It's not, you know, it's just so out of touch and such an ear, isn't it?
Yes.
You know, let's have a massive, expensive state visit. Oh, yes. Meanwhile, Rome burns.
Yeah, right. I think I've got a great metaphor for you. I'm going to play this to you. I don't know if you've seen this. This is Macron's convoy. And I'm not sure whether it's leaving after the banquet or leaving after arriving at the banquet. But here they are. They drive off. The doors are still open, right? And the back is still open. And the cases fall out of it. I mean, that's about as good as a metaphor for this relationship, I think, as anything, is it?
Oh, my goodness. That is extraordinary. I hadn't actually seen that. Hilarious. That's absolutely hilarious.
It's like a French farce. It's just sacre bleu. You know, hello. What's going on? Where is my suitcase, Inspector Clouseau?
Where is the Madonna with the big boobies? Sorry, that was that's
No, that's absolutely fine. It's exactly what it's like. I mean, that's where we are. And you have to laugh.
It is absolutely Pythonesque. I mean, honestly, that film is 50 years old and it just still resonates. And I'm sure the British people are just looking on going, oh my goodness.
I know. It's pathetic. It really is. Great to see you, Sarah. Thank you very much indeed. Very, very good to see you and very enjoyable. Sarah Vine, author and columnist at the Daily Mail. Brilliant. When it comes to small boats, Starmer's like Monty Python's Black Knight. That's really what he's like. Come on then. Speaking of which, Luke Gitto's not much better. Here's a voice note from Tim.
Hi, Mike. Tim in Halifax here, enjoying the show as usual. Really, really enjoyed you just ripping that solicitor or barrister apart, whoever it was. Wow. If that's how he operates in court, he can't win many cases. You should change jobs, mate. You need to just do that job. You absolutely destroyed him. And you know, one of the big reasons you destroyed him, because his argument weak. We need meritocracy. We shouldn't be favouring people on skin colour, etc. We need meritocracy. And he hit the nail on the head inadvertently, because what he said was it costs a fortune basically to do the training. So it's not about skin colour, it's about class. And you were quite right. White working class kids are the ones at the bottom of the pile.
It's true. Tim, thank you very much indeed for that. Adrian in Woking says, as a white middle-aged male, I would be extremely apprehensive to be a defendant in a court today where most judges appear to be liberal and very woke. And Steve says, if I end up in court, could you represent me instead of Luke Gitto's? You had him on toast. I mean, the trouble is, some of these lawyers, you know, I don't want to be unkind, but they think they're really clever. It turns out they're actually not that clever at all. It's 9:27.
Some breaking news this morning revealed that under the Terrorist Act, 242 people were arrested in the year to June of this year.
That's something you can indulge in as to all the people who aren't going to prison because, well, there's no prison spaces.
So this is a talk exclusive we've been looking at.
I said, you take these cuffs off me and speak to me like a human being rather than a common criminal.
You're just left wondering, does these people who lead us actually hate Britain? Yeah. Do they not love our country and everything that we've stood for?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's coming up to 9:30, I should say. I suppose that's the easiest way to say it. Mike, you tied Luke in knots. God help us if this is the quality of lawyers in our country, then God help us. Oh, my God. I'm actually laughing at his responses, says Jan from Newcastle. Jeanette. Yeah, what are we going to do now? We're going to talk to Rakib Hassan, who, of course, is a political commentator, because the Southport inquiry began yesterday. I'm very pleased to say that following on from what we kind of decided to do very much early on in the proceedings, not to name the ghastly, horrible murderer of those three little girls, and we're going to do the same today. We're not going to name him. The Southport inquiry isn't going to do it either. Rakib, very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike. How are you?
Yeah, good to talk to you. We sort of started this a while back because I just said I don't want to see his picture, I don't want to see his name, I don't want to use his name, I don't want to give him any kind of oxygen publicity. But let's talk a bit about the inquiry itself. What's it likely to discover? Is it going to ask the right questions? Is it going to be in any way instructive as to why Keir Starmer behaved in the way that he did?
Well, some of the noises which have been made by the chair of the inquiry, Sir Adrian Fulford, are encouraging, Mike. I think the key thing here is to investigate how this could have been prevented. How was this allowed to happen? Which of our public institutions were at fault? As you know, Mike, I take a keen interest in the PREVENT scheme, the government's anti-terror PREVENT scheme. To my understanding, the perpetrator of these heinous crimes was referred to PREVENT on 3 separate occasions.
Yeah.
And I think what we need to see is, how can the state intervene in these kind of cases where there might not be enough evidence to justify an arrest by one of our police forces, but it's a case where there's a very clear danger to the public, especially some of the most vulnerable people in our society, in this case, little children. So I think that that's what I'm really interested in terms of looking at what the inquiry should be investigating. The fact that this should have never happened, that this could have been avoided, and why it was allowed to happen. And I think that also includes determining public sector accountability as well.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right, because, I mean, I had a famous encounter with Lord Carlisle, who used to run PREVENT, who was very much on the side of those who said, oh, PREVENT's done a brilliant job, you know, you don't always catch everybody. But it really hasn't, and it's not really fit for purpose, I think, in the end. They have to conclude that, surely.
No. It's very clear, and I've been saying this for years, Mike, and we've been saying this in many of our conversations over the years, that PREVENT is clearly not fit for purpose. And I think that the point we have to make here is that the terror threat that we're facing to the broader public, it is constantly changing. It's ever evolving. And I think if you look in this particular case, it's almost like a sort of salad, I'll call it salad bar extremism, Mike. Yeah. It's a sort of ideological pick and mix. And I think it's very possible that our existing counter-terror infrastructure is not really well equipped to deal with cases which draws inspirations from different ideologies that don't fall neatly into Islamist extremism or far-right extremism or indeed far-left extremism. Yeah. And I think that our existing counter-terror structures may not be able to cope with that changing threat that we face.
No, and of course one of the biggest problems that we've got is the likelihood that this will happen again and again and again and again. And we know that there's 500 terrorists who have been imprisoned for terrorist offences in this country currently walking around on the streets. We know that there's, you know, thousands and thousands of people coming here from foreign lands who may indeed be Islamist terrorists, but we just don't know that they are, because we don't know who they are.
Yeah, I think that this is admittedly quite sensitive, but I think the inquiry, perhaps it won't do this, or it doesn't intend to. But what are the circumstances under which the family of the perpetrator were allowed to resettle in the UK? To my understanding, is of Rwandan heritage. Was there a possibility that family members were somewhat involved in the Rwandan civil war? I think these are very sensitive questions, but I think they're worth exploring, because even though the perpetrator in this case was born and raised in Britain, I think that there's a very serious issue when it comes to second-generation migrants with a refugee background and the kind of problems that they have, which pose a threat to the wider society.
Yeah. Well, this has been theorised about before, hasn't it? Because an awful lot of people have come, not necessarily in his case, but certainly from his parents' perspective, come from very, very violent societies, come from places where death and murder and mayhem and torture are very much things that happen every single day. And you can't imagine that people who are exposed to that or who know about it would behave any differently.
No, absolutely, and I think it's very important to make this point that in this particular case, that the perpetrator had a morbid fascination with violence and indeed genocides which have taken place in various parts of the world. So I think that there's many things that the inquiry can investigate, and I hope it does.
Yeah, absolutely right. Rakib, we've got to leave it there because we're short of time today. Thank you very much indeed. Dr. Rakib Hassan, political commentator. You can find him on X, of course. John in Derbyshire says, Mike, I'm crying with laughter. You and Sarah Vine are a great double act. Yeah, she was on good form today. What about a voice note from Len?
Morning, Mike. Len from Brighton here. A very, very sad day today if you're in any way, shape a royalist. I'm a royalist through and through. I feel like my loyalty is being absolutely stretched to breaking point. When the King of England has to kiss the backside of Emmanuel Macron, I mean, that just goes to show you how far this green and pleasant land has sunk. I'm completely and utterly dumbfounded this morning. I really am. But keep up the good work, Mike.
Len, thank you very much indeed. I don't know what's going on with the King. What's going on with him? You know, who's advising him? Why is he spouting all this rubbish that's coming out of Keir Starmer's office? You know, irregular migration. It's not bloody irregular, is it? It's very regular. In fact, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to look up the actual proper definition of irregular and I'm going to read it out to him. And I'm going to write it down. I'm going to send it to the palace. I'll get it couriered round so you can have it with his morning crumpets. 9:37.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through, of course, until 10 o'clock. About another 20 minutes before Julie Hartley-Brewer comes along. Aid says this: the Labour unpopularity graph is astounding. Does there not become a point where it's 80% or 90% of the people have no confidence in the government? They have to call an election. They're obviously not fit to govern. Superb show. Bring on more lawyers and destroy them. Yeah, we'll try and do that. We might have another listen to Luke Gittos before we go to bed later on. Irregular, the definition of, right? According to what I'm looking at here, it means anomalous and unnatural, not conforming to rule, law or custom. Irregular implies not conforming to a law or regulation imposed for the sake of uniformity and method. Well, that doesn't in any way apply to people crossing the channel, does it? Because they do it on a regular basis, thereby making it regular as opposed to irregular, and illegal as opposed to irregular. So I'm very sorry, but we've got a voice note from Judith.
Hi Mike, it's Judith here from Radlett. I don't know about the Black Knight in Monty Python, but do you know what it reminds me of? The whole thing. Carry On Up the Khyber with Sid James and Hattie Jakes and everybody. I don't know whether you remember the scene where there's the massive war going on around them and they're just having dinner and tiffin. And the whole thing reminded me of that yesterday, this banquet. I actually want to laugh, but I find it hard to laugh because God, this country is a bleep, bleep, bleep show. And I don't know what's going to happen. Anyway, just thought I'd give you my 2 pennyworth. Thanks, Mike.
Judith, brilliant. Thank you very much indeed. You're absolutely right. It is like Carrying Up the Khyber. It's complete. It's government by situation comedy. It's ridiculous. Everything they do turns into a complete disaster. It's not just that it doesn't work out. It's completely awful, right? Everything. Absolutely everything. Let's talk to Lord McKinley, Conservative peer, a man who knows a thing or two, of course, about net zero as well, because one of the things that's gone wrong this morning, in addition to the 67% of the people disapproving of the government, is that it's going to cost us £800 billion, according to the Office for Budget Responsibility, to stick with the net zero claims and the targets that we've made for ourselves by 2050. It's a story in The Sun. Lord McKinley, very good morning to you.
Yeah, morning to you, Mike. Good to be with you.
Good to see you. You were very active on the Net Zero Watch Committee, I suppose, for want of a better phrase, when you were an MP. I presume you still take a big interest in it. This is a pretty devastating report from the OBR in general about the state of our country's economy, saying it's very vulnerable, it could literally fall off a cliff at any moment. Surely it would make perfect sense for the Labour government to go, oh, I know what we'll do. We'll just stop these net zero targets and save ourselves $800 billion.
I think the government has got some very, very tough decisions down the line, and I don't think down the line is very far away, actually. The OBR report is generally fairly glossy in favour of particularly Labour governments, I have to say, and even they can't really hold back about the risks that the country is facing. I mean, you've got a choice in life. Well, if you're running out of money, the government's got a choice. Either taxes more, which I think I'm pretty certain is going to be on the agenda for the budget in October, or it stops spending. Now, I'd rather we stopped some spending.
Yes.
This government has proven itself to be incapable of stopping spending. Even, a minor suppression of the ever-escalating benefits bill faced opposition by backbenchers last week, and the PM, as ever, U-turned back down and caused some consternation amongst the Chancellor and the Treasury. So, yeah, the other way that you could save a fair bit of money would be not to keep supporting these nonsensical net zero pathways. 22 billion is proposed for an as yet untested, unknown technology of storing carbon. I mean, that equates to the output of one coal-powered power station. And by the way, China's building one new one of those every single week. India's not far behind. Indonesia hasn't really started on that pathway, and Africa is really in the strops waiting to go. So we're going to spend 22 billion on the incremental increase of one power station that China does a week. These type of nonsenses have got to stop. We've already got the most expensive electricity of anywhere in the world. We're seeing what's left of our industrial heritage, the high energy businesses in ceramics and certainly steel and other industries, just simply shutting up shop, disappearing, reconfiguring those factories in China, and them sending the stuff back to the UK, and hey presto, we look very virtuous because our CO2 has reduced.
Yes.
Now this has got to stop. It has to stop. And this is my gift to the government, if you like. You can't seem to stop spending on benefits. You can't seem to stop spending on an NHS, which is just a black hole that just opens up in front of your feet and will absorb anything you throw at it. The one thing you could do something about, and it might be popular as well, stop spending on the net zero nonsense.
Yeah, because it would seem like it's an easy thing not to spend money on, because it doesn't exist as such. You're talking about not spending money on setting things up, that don't need to be set up, perhaps.
Well, absolutely. That's why I think it's the gift there. Whether Keir Starmer's actually got control over Ed Miliband is a moot point. I'm sure the beleaguered Chancellor would like to have some opportunity of spending less on something. But you're quite right. It doesn't exist yet. It hasn't been built. It won't be missed. And frankly, even if it was built, we wouldn't even have any benefit from it because the whole thing is totally nonsensical. Yeah. I want reliable energy, and to me that means domestic gas. I mean, what is the point in buying Norwegian gas and oil, which we spend £30 billion a year doing? We get no tax out of it, we get no jobs, we get no investment, and yet it's literally coming out of the same basin that we could be exploiting ourselves. Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you want some of the, you described earlier, everything they touch turns to something not gold. I'd say something rather more unpleasant. This is most certainly one of those. It's the most mad of policies that I can ever imagine. And what's left of what was a very successful oil and gas industry is now just shutting up shop because they've raised the tax so high that, who would bother? Set up in Brazil instead and just export it back to the UK. Yeah. And that is what the big oil companies are doing. I would if I were them. Why would you stay here and get taxed to death?
Yes, exactly right. And another bit of breaking news this morning has just come in. The HS2 high-speed train line is only about 1/3 complete. This is according to the project's new chief executive, Mark Wilde, who told this to MPs, I think, in a committee meeting yesterday. So it's even further behind schedule than anybody ever thought. And it's only ever going to go to one place, Birmingham.
Well, I'm afraid this is just... It almost outlines in spades times 10 the failure of government procurement. And I'm afraid you don't need to read too many National Audit Office reports. I used to be on the Public Accounts Committee for a few years. There was a disaster around the corner every single week. You scratch the surface on Ministry of Defence procurement, and I'm afraid there are horror stories there, left, right, and centre. But HS2 really does personify, the madness of a quango that has just got completely out of control, seemingly unaccountable, and every time it comes back to committees in Parliament, there is another load of spend. And I don't need to remind you or your listeners about that ridiculous bat tunnel that was going to cost 120 million for a bat problem that seemingly didn't exist. But I mean, that's just small beer in the scheme of this potential £100 billion project to create a train that I can't see anybody really wants to use. It'll unbelievably expensive. It doesn't actually get you to the city centre of Birmingham. Doesn't even start in the city centre of London. No. So you really have to wonder what it's for. I mean, are we getting to a stage where you say, hold on, stop this. Let's just cover it in tarmac and make a decent road that we will use.
Exactly right. This is great to talk to you. Lord McKinley, thank you very much indeed. We're a bit short of time this morning, but we'll be back with you, I'm sure, very, very soon. Brad in Cambridge says this: I've been a staunch supporter of the royal family all my life, but this latest outrage from Charles is the last straw. It is so damaging. He doesn't make accidental errors or mistakes in his carefully crafted announcements. This is pure interference in politics. And Brad, I don't think I could disagree with any of that. One here from Leslie who says, Mike, I dread the warm weather because I know more irregulars will invade our shores. Coming up next, we're going to be looking at that interview I did with the lawyer, because it's a good episode, I think, for anyone who thinks lawyers are clever to just study and think about and make a recommendation. Julie Hartley-Brewer coming up, of course, as well. This is Talk.
President Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister, on a state visit to America in the White House. He surprised, we're told, Donald Trump, who's blushing like a little bride. It was like a Southern belle when he discovered that Netanyahu has nominated him for a Nobel Peace Prize. Think that's a fair nomination?
I mean, it tells you how little a nomination makes. Any Pol Sci academic, any MP, anyone could nominate for it. If Matt Goodwin was still at a university, he could nominate you.
He is at a university.
But yeah, get somebody you like, and you can rival Donald Trump for the nomination.
I'm going to insist that I get a nomination.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 9:51 here with you until 10, of course. One here from Neil in Salisbury. Morning, Mike. Quotas are nonsense. You wouldn't choose your surgeon on that basis. Well, you certainly wouldn't, would you? We're going to listen to what Luke Gitto's had to say about quotas in a minute. He's, of course, talking about a judge's course for BAME lawyers only. Let's get a voice note first from Judith, though.
Hello, it's Judy from Altos, West Yorkshire. I've got another money-saving idea for Starmer, if he'll listen, which he won't. You can't claim benefits or legal aid in this country until you've lived here and worked for 10 years. That should save us a small fortune. But the way Lammy keeps dishing money out, I dread him going to another country because he always gives them money. So, anyway, that's another idea I have. Thank you.
Brilliant. You're full of ideas, Judith. Thank you very much indeed. Let's have a listen to Luke Gittos. He's a partner at Murray Human. And he was talking about, of course, our exclusive, that judges are now being given, or potential judges are being given free courses in how to become judges, but only if they're from a black or ethnic minority background. Have a listen.
We have an important principle in this country, which is justice is not only done, but is also seen to be done.
Yes, but it's also supposed to be colourblind, isn't it?
It is, and it should be.
Well, it's not colourblind if you're promoting black people and ethnic minority candidates to deliberately make a sort of a false upscaling of certain minorities because you think you're not doing it right.
That's not what's happening with these workshops, and I would agree with you. If someone was being promoted to the judiciary just for being from an ethnic minority, then that would be a serious problem. There's not that network of people like them within the judiciary. They feel as though it's an exclusionary atmosphere, one run, that's effectively still an old boys club. That's the impression that exists, and that's what...
Well, I imagine there's probably not very many white working class kids that make it into the judiciary as judges either. Are you going to do a course for them?
Well, they have. That's what I said earlier, which is that they have run these courses for people from state schools, and I've little doubt that they would love more applications from people from working class backgrounds. But there is a deep, there's always a problem when professions like lawyers try in their clumsy way to correct social inequalities that lead to the kind of disparities that we see within our profession. Our profession is made up of mostly people who haven't had to struggle to survive or haven't had to, have struggled to pay their bills day by day because it's expensive to become a lawyer. It's a luxury to become a lawyer.
So once you're a lawyer, you're already part of the elite anyway, aren't you? So you've already done pretty well for yourself.
That's definitely true. And, these workshops are trying to make sure that as best we can, we don't create an artificially exclusionary environment within the judiciary where people feel as though they can't make it because of the colour of their skin or their background.
Yeah. But they've already, in a way, they've already made it, though, because they're already lawyers, aren't they? I mean, if you're a barrister in this country, I don't think you're going to walk around going, I've been discriminated against because I'm white, black, or whatever.
No, but lawyers go into a courtroom every day. They see the person sitting in front of them adjudicating over their case. And I think it would be a problem if every single judge who sat in our Crown Courts was white and from public school. That would create an artificial...
But they're not, are they?
...of what our society's like. No, it's not. But it's also important...
So it's fine, then?
People who want to become... You might argue that the Law Society is trying to create a problem that doesn't exist, right? That might be...
Well, I think they're trying to correct a problem that doesn't exist.
Well, that might... You might be right on the statistics, but for whatever reason, there is an impression amongst lawyers that the judiciary is a closed shop. and that it needs more people from different backgrounds. Now, they might be wrong about that, but you seem to be making a different argument, which is actually this is wrong in principle.
Yeah,
because
I think tokenism and sort of projects which try to make quotas necessary in any job, I think is the wrong way to go. I just don't think it's fair.
Tokenism would be wrong, but what if it was the case that really good people were not applying to become judges because they thought it was only for white people from public school?
I don't think anybody thinks that.
Well, we don't know, do we? But
I'm pretty sure that most barristers are quite intelligent people, right? Most barristers are quite intelligent people. I would imagine they've got quite far because they are quite intelligent and because they're quite ambitious and because they're quite well educated. And I don't think they need to be told, here's how you become a judge because you previously didn't think you could.
Well, the fact is that people need to feel as though there is a network of support there if they want to move into a new position within their profession. That's what these workshops are.
What about white people who might feel like they're not? What about white people who might feel that they're not ready or they're somehow not qualified to be judges? They're not getting any help, are they?
Well, they do. The programs exist for people who.
So you've got a white-only program as well, have you?
Yeah, I've said that maybe 3 times now, that there is a program.
You said there was a state school program. You didn't say it was white-only.
No, it's not white-only.
So it isn't then. You haven't got a white-only. So you haven't got a white-only course then?
No, there is a state school course.
Well, that's not a white-only course, is it?
White and who are... No, it's not I've already said 3 or 4 times it's not a white-only course because white people are the majority within the population. And if you sought to exclude people merely because of their race, that would be racist.
Yeah. But I have to say, Luke, I don't wish to be unkind to you, but you're not making a very good case here at all. Oh, dear. And how about this, right? You want representation for the black lawyers, right? Check this from Darryl. Morning, Mike. You've got the Black Solicitors Network, you've got the Society of Black Lawyers, you've got the Association of Muslim Lawyers, and you've got Law Society's Ethnic Minority Lawyers Division. It seems to me that they're pretty well served by various...
They don't know what the they're doing. Do you understand that?
Unbelievable. Luke Gittos, who is this bloke? I mean, that's not the word he uses. There isn't a problem, but we're going to try and fix it anyway. 100% idiot. I mean, it's hard to believe, isn't it, that some people reach the sort of the pinnacle of their profession and become barristers and lawyers, but they're just not very smart. I don't know why that is. Michael Islington says, "I'm sick of this country. Do you think Nigeria have got lots of white lawyers? What the is going on?" Well, you may well ask. I don't know. It's been a very interesting show this morning. The reasons the suitcases fell out of Macron's people carrier was illegal migrant people were taking up the space, as Bill from Thailand. Yeah, very possibly. Very possibly. Anyway, there we are. We're nearly finished. Julie Hartley-Prewis here. Very good morning.
That's the signal. It's near the end of the show. I'm here.
Here you are.
I'm wandering.
Very good to see you. Irregular crossings. I mean, would they stop it?
I hate it when they say that.
Stop it with that word.
Do you know what I love? The assumption about this whole one in, one out thing, which is the assumption is then, automatically you're saying you don't believe that the people coming on the Channel migrant boats are legitimate asylum seekers.
Right.
So once you've admitted that, why are you treating them as if they are and giving them the same benefits?
Exactly.
The whole premise is actually completely undermines why we're in the madness. I mean, that said, we're asking about Macron basically blaming the UK for this problem. I agree with... I mean, God, I'm upset about this, but I agree with Macron. He's right.
Well, Nigel Farage said the same thing when he was here. You know, it's our fault because we're too good to them. We're too nice to them.
Yeah.
Right? So let's just not be so...